Hello there, Wanderers of the Night. Welcome back to Midnight Reddit Tales. We've gathered some of the deepest, most intriguing stories the internet has to hide after dark. If you enjoy these midnight dives, please leave a like, subscribe, and join our nocturnal community. Now let the shadows fall. And let's jump straight into the tales.
Story 1. My grandmother is a viper in a cardigan. For my entire life, she's used words like weapons, honing in on the softest parts of people and striking without hesitation. She saves the worst of her venom for me. My brother Mark died in a car accident when he was 19. At his funeral, while I was sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe, she cornered me by the casket. She patted my hand, a fake pitying look on her face, and whispered, "It's a shame God took the good one." I was 15. I couldn't even process the cruelty. I just stood there paralyzed. Years later, my husband and I lost our first child, a daughter we named Lily, who was stillborn. It was the single most devastating event of my life. A week after we buried her, my grandmother called. There was no sympathy, just a cold, analytical question. "Well, are you going to try again, or are you just broken?" That was it. That was the moment the switch flipped. The part of me that had always made excuses for her, she's from a different generation, she doesn't know what she's saying, it just died. I hung up the phone and made a decision. I was done. I went full no contact. Not the dramatic announcement-making kind. The quiet, ice-cold kind. At the next family Christmas, I walked past her like she was a piece of furniture. I didn't say hello. I didn't make eye contact. When she tried to speak to me, I turned to my mother and asked her to pass the potatoes. The silence at that end of the table was so thick you could have carved it. She didn't like being ignored. A queen needs her court, and one of her subjects refusing to bow was an act of treason. First, she sent in the flying monkeys, my cousins Jessica and David. They were her golden grandchildren, the ones who could do no wrong. They caught me at my nephew's birthday party. Jessica started all fake concern. "Grandma is really hurting. You're breaking her heart." "Is she?" I said, not looking up from wrapping a gift. David jumped in, more aggressive. "You're being selfish. She's an old woman. You need to get over whatever little grudge you're holding on to and show some respect." I finally looked at him. Respect is earned, David. And she spent 30 years burning that bridge. I'm just refusing to let her rebuild it on my property. I handed the gift to my sister-in-law and walked away. When the guilt trips failed, my grandmother escalated. My phone rang late one night. It was my aunt, my grandmother's staunchest defender, sobbing hysterically. "It's Grandma," she wailed. She collapsed. "We're at the hospital. She's asking for you, Janice. The doctors don't know if she's going to make it." The old me would have dropped everything, overcome with guilt, and raced to the hospital. The new me was suspicious. "Which hospital?" I asked, my voice flat. She told me. "Okay," I said. "I'm calling the nurses' station on her floor to get an update directly. I'll call you back." The line went dead quiet. Then a sputtering. Why would you do that?" "Just get down here." "Because I don't believe you," I said, and hung up. I called the hospital. They had no patient by her name. Not in the year, not admitted, nowhere. I called my mom. Aunt Carol just called me sobbing. Said Grandma collapsed and is at Memorial. My mom sighed. "I'm looking at her right now, Janice. She's on her couch watching her game shows. Carol is in the kitchen with her, they're making tea." The sheer calculated manipulation of it all sent a shock of cold fury through me. They faked a medical emergency. They used the idea of her death as a weapon to try and drag me back into line. The family split wide open after that. half of them led by my aunt and my golden cousins called me a cold-hearted bitch. The other half, led by my parents, were disgusted with my grandmother's tactics. Family gatherings became a minefield of hostile glares and whispered insults. I didn't care. The peace of not having her poison in my life was worth every bit of it. 2 years passed like this. 2 years of blessed silence. I finished my degree, pouring all that anger and frustration into my studies. I was graduating magna cum laude, and my parents decided to throw me a big BBQ to celebrate. A real party. The whole extended family was invited. I knew she'd be there, but I wasn't going to let her existence ruin my day. This was my accomplishment. The party was great. The sun was out, my friends were there. And for the first time in a long time, the family drama felt distant. My mom and dad were beaming. They brought out a cake that said "Congratulations, Janice," in bright blue icing. My favorite aunt, my dad's sister, clinked her fork against a bottle to get everyone's attention. She raised her beer. "I just want to make a toast," she said, her voice full of genuine pride. "To my niece, Janice. We all know how incredibly hard you've worked for this. To graduate with magna cum laude honors is just amazing, and we are all so proud of you." A chorus of "hear, hear" and applause rippled through the backyard. I felt a rare, uncomplicated wave of happiness wash over me. I smiled, feeling the warmth of the sun and the love from the people who mattered. Then from the corner of the patio where my grandmother sat stewing in a lawn chair, a voice cut through the air like a shriek of shattering glass. Well, maybe she screamed, her voice trembling with rage, causing everyone to freeze and turn toward her. Maybe we should all show a little more respect for the ones that didn't graduate. She was staring right at me, her face a twisted mask of pure, undiluted hatred. Or for the ones who didn't waste their time and their parents' money on a useless piece of paper. The backyard went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the grass. Every eye swiveled from her, a trembling, venomous old woman, to me. This was it. The moment she'd engineered. All the attention, all the drama pointed at her, with me as the villain of her story. The old Janice would have shrunk, cried, apologized for being happy. The new Janice just set her beer down on the picnic table. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The quiet carried further than her screaming ever could. "Are you finished?" I asked. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. The shock of me not immediately dissolving into tears threw her off script. I said, I repeated, my voice calm. "And cold, are you finished? Or do you have more to say about how my success is an inconvenience to you?" "This isn't about you," she spat, recovering. "This is about respect." I laughed. A short, sharp, ugly sound. Respect? You wouldn't know respect if it bit you. You want to talk about the people who didn't graduate? Let's talk about them. Let's talk about my grandfather, your husband, the alcoholic who couldn't hold a job. The one you defended every time he hit you, every time he hit his kids. He didn't graduate. Does he get your respect? A collective gasp went through the family. No one ever spoke about my grandfather. "You are a jealous, bitter woman." I continued walking slowly toward her. Her flying monkeys, Jessica and David, started to move toward her like a Secret Service detail for a tyrant. "You can't stand to see anyone happy, especially me. My joy is like poison in your veins. You tried to ruin my brother's funeral. You tried to ruin the memory of my daughter. And now you're trying to ruin this. But you're failing. Do you see? You have no more power here." I stopped a few feet from her chair. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and for the first time I didn't see a monster. I just saw a pathetic, empty old woman. Enjoy your cake, I said, then turned my back on her and walked away. The party died a quick, awkward death after that. My parents and my husband circled the wagons around me. But the damage was done. The air was too thick with toxicity to breathe. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. It was only the opening skirmish. 3 days later, I was at my parents' house helping my mom sort through some old photos for a scrapbook. There was a knock on the door. Mom went to answer it and I heard her voice drop. "What are you all doing here?" I walked into the living room and froze. There they were. The unholy trinity. My grandmother flanked by Jessica and David, with my Aunt Carol bringing up the rear. They looked like they were there to perform an exorcism. "We're here for an intervention," my grandmother announced, sweeping past my mother into the house as if she owned it. "You need to leave," I said, my voice dangerously low. "Not until you listen," David said, holding up a folded piece of paper. "We've all written letters." It was so absurd I almost laughed. They ambushed me in my parents' home to read me letters about my own bad behavior. "We miss the old Janice," Jessica said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "The sweet girl you used to be." "The doormat, you mean," I corrected her. "The girl who took the abuse and never talked back." "Fine. You want an intervention? Let's have one. Who's first?" David, ever the brave one, stepped forward. He unfolded his letter. "Janice," he began reading in a self-important drone. "We are worried about the anger you're holding on to. It's not healthy. You need to let go and learn to forgive. Family is the most important thing." I let him get about halfway through before I cut him off. "David," I said, "are you still 2 months behind on your child support payments to Sarah? Or is it 3 now?" He stopped, his face turning beet red. "That has nothing to do with this." "It has everything to do with this," I snapped. "You're standing here reading a letter about family when you barely see your own kids. And anger. You want to talk about anger? Should I call Sarah and ask her about the hole you punched in her wall? The one that finally made her leave you? Don't you dare lecture me on forgiveness." He crumpled the letter in his fist, speechless. I turned to Jessica. "Your turn." Jessica, looking shaken, held up her own letter. I just think you're not seeing how much you've hurt Grandma. You should be grateful. She lets you live your life." "Grateful?" I laughed again, that same ugly sound. "Jessica, you're 34 years old and your husband still gives you an allowance. Because you can't be trusted with a credit card. You haven't paid a bill on your own in your entire life. You and David live off of her money, so of course you defend her. You're not her grandchildren. You're her employees. Your job is to enable her cruelty, and you're both very good at it." Jessica burst into tears. Aunt Carol rushed to her side, glaring at me. "How could you be so cruel?" "Now times that times is funny coming from you," I said, turning my full attention to her. "The woman who called me sobbing, pretending my grandmother was dying in a hospital. You used the idea of her death to manipulate me. You are the most two-faced, spineless person I have ever met. You've spent your entire life cleaning up her messes and making excuses for her and for what a little bit of her approval that she'll never give you. You're pathetic." Then I turned to the viper in the cardigan. She stood there silent, her face a mask of stone-cold fury. All her soldiers were wounded, their little paper swords lying useless on the floor. And you, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. You talk about the ones we've lost. You used Mark against me. You used my daughter against me. You are a cancer. You are a black hole of misery that tries to suck everyone into it. You talk about missing the old me. Well, I'm glad she's gone. She died so I could live. I took a step closer. When Lily died, a part of me died with her. But the part that loved you, the part that made excuses for you, the part that saw you as my grandmother, it died too. As far as I'm concerned, I buried you both on the same day. You are dead to me. Just then the front door opened again. My dad walked in holding a bag of groceries. He stopped dead, taking in the scene, me standing like a general over a battlefield, my cousins in tears, my aunt sputtering, and my grandmother looking like she was about to have a genuine medical emergency this time. My mom just looked at him and said, "They came for an intervention." My dad's face hardened. He dropped the grocery bag on the floor. "Get out," he said, his voice a low growl. I'd only heard a handful of times in my life. "We were just trying to help Janice," Aunt Carol wailed. "Out," he roared, pointing to the door. "All of you, get out of my house. Now." They scrambled. They practically fell over each other, trying to get out the door, a pathetic sniveling retreat. My dad slammed the door behind them so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. He turned to me, his eyes searching mine. "Are you okay?" I nodded, a slow, deep breath leaving my body. "Yeah, Dad. I am." And for the first time, it was the absolute truth. My mom wrapped me in a hug. "I am so proud of you," she whispered. That night, I blocked their numbers. All of them. I blocked them on social media. I systematically erased every digital path they had to me. The next day, I called my dad's sister, the aunt who had toasted me at the party. I told her everything. Every last ugly detail of the ambush. The news spread through the family like wildfire. The story of the faked hospital visit, which had been a rumor, was now a confirmed fact. The story of the intervention painted them not as concerned relatives, but as a gang of bullies. The tide turned. People who had been neutral were now firmly on our side. My grandmother, for the first time in her life, found herself isolated. Her phone calls went unanswered. Her power, built on a lifetime of fear and manipulation, crumbled to dust because I had simply refused to play her game anymore. I felt nothing. No guilt. No remorse. No sadness. Just a quiet, clean, and beautiful emptiness where all that toxicity used to be. The war was over. I had won. Story 2. My life has always been a collection of hand-me-downs. Hand-me-down clothes from my stepsister Jessica that were always a little too small. A hand-me-down bedroom, which was really just a glorified closet with a mattress on the floor. Even a hand-me-down family. My mom Sarah had me when she was 17. The story was always the same. My biological father was a scared kid who ran the second the pregnancy test came back positive. A few years later, she met Mark. He had his own daughter Jessica, who was a year older than me. They got married, had 3 more kids together, and I became the permanent unwanted house guest. Emily cleared the table. Mark grunted, not looking up from his phone. His plate was already clean. Mine was half full of the watery mac and cheese, but I was done. There was never enough for seconds. "I will," I said, stacking his plate on top of mine. "And do Jessica's dishes too," my mom added from the stove her back to me. "She has that big history project to finish." Jessica gave me a smug little smile from across the table. Her project was already done. I'd seen her turn it in 2 days ago. But arguing was pointless. It would just earn me the ungrateful speech from my mom and a week of the silent treatment from Mark. So I just nodded my jaw tight. I scraped the leftover food into the trash. It wasn't much, but my stomach still growled. In this house, everything was measured. My share of the food, my use of the hot water, the space I took up. Mark never missed a chance to remind my mom how much her first mistake was costing him. My half-siblings, 2 little boys and a girl, were already running wild in the living room, their shouts echoing through the thin walls of our cramped rental. They were Mark's kids. They belonged. Jessica belonged. I was just here. Later that night, I was hiding in my closet room, scrolling through Instagram to drown out the sound of Mark and my mom fighting about bills. It was their nightly routine. His voice would get louder. Hers would get quieter. And then there'd be silence. That was always the worst part. My phone buzzed with a message request. The profile picture was a smiling blonde woman, maybe in her late 30s. The username was Anna Williams 85. I didn't recognize her. I almost deleted it, figuring it was spam, but my thumb hit accept by accident. The message read, "Hi Emily. I know this is going to be incredibly strange, but please hear me out. My name is Anna, and I believe I'm married to your father." I stared at the words, my heart giving a painful thud. A scam. It had to be a scam. Some new cruel way for kids at school to mess with me. I typed back, my fingers clumsy. "You have the wrong person." A reply came instantly. The 3 little dots appeared and disappeared. "Your mother is Sarah Jenkins, right? You're 16, you live in Northwood, and you have a scar over your left eyebrow from when you fell off a swing set as a kid." My blood went cold. I touched the faint silvery line above my brow. No one knew about that except my mom. She was the one who was pushing me on the swing. My hands were shaking now. "Who is this?" "My name is Anna Williams. My husband is David Williams. He's your father, and he didn't abandon you. Your mother left and took you with her." The words felt like a punch to the gut. It couldn't be true. My entire identity was built on that one solid fact. I was the girl whose father didn't want her. It was the reason my mom was so bitter, the reason Mark had all the power, the reason I felt like a ghost in my own home. "You're lying," I typed. "He left before I was even born." "No, Emily. He didn't. He was there for the first 6 months. He adored you. Then Sarah said she was going to the store with you, and she never came back. He looked for you for years. Hired private investigators, everything. She covered her tracks well." My mind was spinning. The story my mom told me was so clear. He was a boy, Emily, not a man. He saw the ultrasound and he ran. Never even saw your face. She told it to me so many times, her voice flat and hard that I could recite it myself. "I don't believe you." I sent, though a sick, hopeful feeling was starting to curdle in my stomach. "I know this is a lot, but he never stopped thinking about you. We found you through an old friend of your mom's who felt guilty and finally told us where she'd moved. Please just let me show you one thing." I waited. A new message popped up. It was a picture. two pictures actually in a side-by-side collage. On the left was a recent photo of me, a selfie I'd posted last week. On the right was a faded photo of a boy who looked about my age, maybe 17. He had a goofy, lopsided grin and dark, messy hair. And he had my eyes. It wasn't just the color, a dark, muddy green that no one else in my family had. It was the shape of them. The slight tilt at the corners. He had the same sharp jawline I tried to hide with my hair, the same straight nose. We even had the same tiny mole right next to our right eye. Looking at him was like looking at a male version of myself. Beneath the photo, a new message from Anna appeared. That was him the year before you were born. Emily, he wants to meet you. He's wanted nothing else for 16 years. I couldn't breathe. My whole life, the entire foundation of it was a lie. My mom hadn't been the abandoned victim. She'd been the one who ran. She'd stolen me. I stood up, my legs feeling like they were full of sand. My phone was clenched in my fist. The screen glowing with the face of the boy who was my father. From the living room, I could hear my mom's tired voice telling the little ones it was time for bed. She sounded so normal. Like she hadn't spent the last 16 years feeding me the biggest lie imaginable. The sick, hopeful feeling in my stomach was gone. In its place, a cold, hard anger was beginning to form. I walked out of my room, my footsteps silent on the worn-out carpet. I needed to see her face when I asked. I needed to watch her lie to me one more time. The judge's words echoed in my ears, but they didn't feel real until my father David called me later that day. His voice was thick with emotion. It's official, Emily. You're coming home. Primary custody, it was a sterile legal term for what felt like a jailbreak. The silence in the house that night was different. It wasn't the usual tired, angry silence. It was a thick, suffocating blanket of judgment. Mark didn't even grunt at me. Jessica looked right through me. My mom, Sarah, was a ghost moving from room to room without a word, her face a stone mask. The next day I started packing. I didn't have much. A few boxes were enough for the faded jeans, the stretched out sweaters from Jessica, and the handful of books I'd managed to collect. I was carefully folding a hoodie when the door to my closet room creaked open. It was my mom. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching me. For a full minute, she said nothing, just let the hostile silence stretch. So, that's it, she finally said, her voice dangerously low. You just pack up your little life and walk away. I kept folding. The court decided. The court, she scoffed, a bitter, ugly sound. Don't you hide behind the court. This was your choice. You chose them. Strangers. I stopped, the hoodie clutched in my hands. He's my father. I'm your mother, she shrieked. The mask cracking. I am the one who was here, I raised you. Me while he was off living his perfect life, building his perfect family. You're the one who left. I said, my own voice quiet but shaking. You took me from him. You lied about it for 16 years. She stalked into the room, grabbing a t-shirt from my box and throwing it onto the floor. I did what I had to do to survive. You think it was easy? A teenage mom with nothing, I protected you. You protected yourself, I shot back, finally looking at her. You didn't want to be tied down, so you ran. You used me as your excuse. Her face twisted. You are the most selfish, ungrateful child I have ever known. After everything I've sacrificed for you, you abandon us. You abandon your brothers and sister. What am I supposed to do now? The question hung in the air. It wasn't times what will I do without you times. It was times what am I supposed to do now asterisk. And suddenly I saw it. The whole pathetic truth. Who is going to watch the kids when I have to work a double? She raged, her voice cracking. Who's going to help get them ready for school? Did you even think about that? I just stared at her. It was like a switch had been flipped, illuminating every dark corner of our relationship. I wasn't a daughter. I was a tool. A live-in babysitter. An employee who worked for scraps of food and a mattress on the floor. She wasn't done. And the money, Emily. That $1,000 a month he's been sending since he found you. That was for times this family asterisk. That was for groceries. For rent. You're taking food out of your siblings' mouths by leaving. There it was. The final disgusting piece. The child support David had started sending the moment he legally could. I'd thought it was just going into a black hole of bills. I never realized she saw it as payment for my services. The anger drained out of me, replaced by a cold, hollow certainty. I wasn't abandoning a mother. I was quitting a job. I bent down, picked up the t-shirt she'd thrown, and calmly placed it back in the box. It was never about me, was it? I asked, my voice flat. It was about what I could do for you. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she had no lie ready. She just stared at me, her chest heaving, and I could see the frantic calculations behind her eyes. The babysitter was leaving. The paycheck was gone. She turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard a small crack appeared in the cheap wood. I looked at the crack, then at my boxes. I wasn't just packing my clothes. I was packing away 16 years of guilt that didn't belong to me. The last few days were a special kind of hell. They didn't speak to me, but they made sure I knew I was being ignored. At dinner, I asked for the salt, and Mark just stared straight ahead. Jessica, with a theatrical sigh, picked it up and passed it directly to him. My youngest brother, Leo, toddled up to me with a crayon drawing of a lopsided smiley face. Before I could take it, Sarah swept in and scooped him up. "Come on, sweetie," she cooed loud enough for me to hear. "Let's not bother Emily. She's too busy for us now." Leo looked back at me, his face confused and hurt, and my heart cracked a little. They were poisoning them against me, turning me into the villain who broke their family, even though it was already shattered beyond repair. But it didn't hurt the way they wanted it to. Every cruel silence, every pointed snub just validated my decision. It was proof. This wasn't a family. It was a hostage situation. And I was finally getting out. I felt the guilt, a dull ache for the little kids who didn't understand. But underneath it was a fierce, roaring fire of relief. My last night, I sat on my mattress, surrounded by my 3 cardboard boxes. On the wall, I'd hung a cheap calendar Anna had sent me in a care package. With a black marker, I drew a big X through Saturday. Tomorrow was Sunday. Tomorrow my dad was coming. Tomorrow my life would start. And that was the only revenge that mattered. Story 3. I was raised to be a good investment. My parents, traditional to the core, poured everything into my education. Not for my liberation, but for my market value as a future wife. I was to be smart, but not opinionated. Successful, but not independent. I went along with it, aced my classes, got my master's, and landed a great job in tech. I was 29 and had never been on a real date. Then I met Rome. He was 26, charming, and knew all the right things to say. He'd listen with this intense focus like I was the only person in the world. He told me I was beautiful and brilliant. My parents, who were starting to get nervous about my advancing age, were ecstatic. A handsome younger man totally smitten with their perfect daughter. We were married within a year. The illusion cracked about 3 months in. Rome quit his job at the warehouse. "The management is toxic, babe," he said, stretching out on the couch at 11 a.m. "I need to find my passion." His passion, it turned out, was playing video games with his friends and using my credit card for takeout. I tried to talk to him. "Rome, we need your income." "You make plenty," he'd shrug. "Don't you want me to be happy?" My parents' advice was simple. Be a good wife, Shirley. Support your husband. Divorce is not an option for our family. So I made a choice. Fine. I would support him, but he would be a roommate, not a husband. I paid the mortgage on the house I'd bought before we met. I paid the bills. I cooked my own meals and lived my own life. He had his side of the house, I had mine. We were two separate people sharing a Wi-Fi password. It was a cold, quiet arrangement, but it was stable. The stability broke when Rome got nosy. He started asking about my childhood, my high school years, my college life, all the things I never volunteered. I kept my answers vague. My past was mine. One afternoon, I came home to find him sitting on the floor surrounded by photos. My photos. Awkward school pictures, me with braces, me at my 8th grade graduation in a hideous dress my mother picked out. "Where did you get these?" I asked, my voice tight. He grinned, holding up a picture of me with a terrible perm. "Your dad sent them. He said you'd get a kick out of it." "Man, you were a dork." I snatched the photo from his hand. I checked my phone. There it was, a text from my father, asterisk, "Sent Rome those funny baby pictures you hate." He loved them times. He hadn't asked me. He hadn't even told me. He just went behind my back and handed over a piece of my private life to the man-child sleeping in my guest room. That night, I called my parents. "Mom, Dad, I need you to do something for me," I said, keeping my voice as level as possible. "Please do not give Rome any of my personal belongings or documents without asking me first." My mother sighed. "Oh, Shirley, don't be so sensitive. He's your husband. He just wants to know you better." "If he wants to know me better, he can ask me," I said. "This is a boundary. Do not cross it." I had the same conversation with Rome. "If you want something of mine, a photo, a document, anything, you ask me directly. Not my parents." "Geez, okay," he said, rolling his eyes. "Whatever." I thought the message was clear. I was wrong. My parents didn't see a boundary. They saw a request they were free to ignore. They saw a difficult daughter making trouble for her poor, sweet husband. 2 weeks later, I walked into the living room and froze. On the coffee table was a thick stack of freshly printed paper bound with a clip. On the cover page was my name, the title of my master's thesis, and the university crest. It was my proudest achievement. The culmination of years of work. The very thing that secured my financial independence. It was my escape hatch. Rome walked in, toweling his hair dry. He saw me staring at it and beamed. "Awesome, right? I wanted to read it, but you never showed me." "So I asked your dad, and he just emailed me the file." So much easier. My blood ran cold. My father had a digital copy for safekeeping. He had taken that symbol of my autonomy and handed it directly to the man I was trying to keep at arm's length. It wasn't just a paper. It was a message from my parents' times. Your husband's curiosity is more important than your privacy. His feelings matter more than your boundaries. We are on his side, not yours, asterisk. I picked up the thesis, the paper cool against my trembling fingers. I felt a kind of rage I had never experienced before. It was sharp and clarifying. The years of being a dutiful daughter, of swallowing my own needs for their approval, were over. I walked into my office and closed the door. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Rome. Asterisk, your dad is the best. Seriously impressed. This paper. You're so smart. Let's celebrate tonight. Asterisk. Another buzz. My father. Asterisk, Rome asked for your thesis. So nice that he takes an interest in your work. You have a good husband, surely. Asterisk. I ignored them both. I opened a new message, my thumb hovering over the keypad. I typed one sentence to my parents' group chat. Asterisk, we need to talk. Now. Asterisk. My mother called within 30 seconds, my father already on speaker. His loud breathing filling the silence. Shirley. What's wrong? Your text was very alarming. I took a breath, holding the printed thesis in my hand like a shield. I'm holding a copy of my master's thesis. Rome has it. He said Dad sent it to him. A beat of silence. Then my father's gruff voice. Yes. He asked for it. I was proud to send it. It's good for a husband to be interested in his wife's accomplishments. I told you not to give him my things. I said, my voice dangerously low. I told you both that was my boundary. I was explicit. Oh, Shirley, don't make a fuss, my mother said, her tone the one she always used when I was being difficult. He is your husband. He loves you. He just wants to feel included in your life. This is a good thing. He is not a part of my academic life. He is not a part of my career. He is a man who lives in my house because you told me divorce was shameful. I snapped. This isn't about him. It's about you. You heard my boundary and you deliberately, consciously walked right over it. You sent a message that his whims are more important than my explicit request. You are being hysterical, my father boomed. He is the man of the house. He has a right to know his wife. We are his elders, and we are helping him. You should be grateful. Grateful. The word was a lit match on a trail of gasoline. I had been grateful my whole life. Grateful for an education that came with strings. Grateful for a roof over my head that felt more like a cage. Grateful for a life they designed, not one I chose. Okay, I said, my voice suddenly calm, clear, and cold as ice. Okay. I see that my feelings don't matter. I see that my boundaries are a joke to you. So let's talk about something you do understand. I paused. I could hear my mother start to say something, but I cut her off. The money, I said. The $500 I send you on the first of every month. The fun money, as you call it. The budget for your weekend trips, your fancy dinners, your hobbies. The money that comes directly from the job I have because of the thesis you so casually gave away. Shirley. What are you saying? My mother whispered. I'm saying this is the last warning. The very last time. If you ever times give any of my personal information, documents, photos, or belongings to Rome again, or to anyone else without my permission, the money stops. The transfers will end that day, and they will never resume. Is that times boundary clear enough for you? The explosion was instantaneous. It was entirely my father. How dare you, he roared, the sound so loud it distorted the phone speaker. How dare you throw money in our faces? We raised you. We fed you. We paid for your school so you could have a good life. A good husband. And this is how you repay us. By threatening your own parents. I said nothing. I just listened. You are a shameless daughter. A cold, heartless Americanized woman. You think because you have a big job you can buy our respect. You demand respect from your father like you are collecting a debt. I am ashamed to call you my child. Ashamed. He went on for what felt like an hour. I was a disappointment, an ungrateful brat, a terrible wife. I was destroying the family. All the while I heard my mother in the background weeping, saying, "Please stop, you're both being crazy." When he finally ran out of steam, his breathing ragged, I spoke into the void he left behind. "So we're clear then," I said. "The next time it happens, the money stops." I hung up before he could start again. I blocked their numbers. Then I sat in my office and shook. The fallout was swift and brutal. My phone started blowing up with texts from my older sister, Sarah. Asterisk, Sarah, mom is hysterical. What did you say to them? Asterisk. Asterisk, Sarah, dad told me you threatened to cut them off. Surely, what the hell? Asterisk. Asterisk, Sarah. They are your parents. You can't do that. Apologize to them right now. Asterisk. I texted back times. They gave Rome my thesis after I explicitly told them not to. Asterisk. Her reply came a minute later times. So he's your husband. You're overreacting. You owe them an apology. Asterisk. I blocked her too. Rome tried to approach me that evening. He must have heard the shouting from my office. He knocked on the door, holding the offending document. Hey, is everything okay? Your dad called me and sounded really pissed off. I opened the door and took the thesis from his hands. I looked him dead in the eye. The next time you want something that belongs to me, I said, you will remember this day and you will ask me first. Because I promise you my reaction will be 1,000 times worse than my father's. He just stared, his mouth slightly open, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked genuinely afraid. He backed away without a word. That at least felt like a victory. But the guilt was a physical thing, a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. For 2 days I replayed the conversation with my father in my head. Asterisk, shameless daughter. Ungrateful. Demanding respect like you are collecting a debt. Asterisk. Was he right? I called my best friend Maya. She listened to the whole story without interrupting. Good for you, she said immediately. They backed you into a corner, and you used the only tool you had. They didn't respect you as a daughter, so you made them respect you as their benefactor. It's harsh, but they started it. But then I talked to my other friend Chloe. She was horrified. Surely no. You just don't do that. They're your family. They're from a different generation. They don't understand boundaries. Threatening them with money it's cruel. It confirms every bad thing they think about you becoming too independent. Now I'm torn. Half of me feels liberated, like I finally stood up for myself in the only language my family understands, leverage. The other half of me feels like a monster. I used my financial power, the very thing I earned, to get free, as a weapon against the people who in their own twisted way gave me the ability to earn it. They see Rome as their ally, their way of keeping me in the traditional box I was supposed to occupy. By violating my privacy, they weren't just appeasing him. They were actively trying to force a closeness between us that I've been resisting. They were trying to reinforce the marriage I've mentally checked out of. I'm sitting here in a house I pay for with a husband I support estranged from the parents I also support. I fought for my autonomy, but I used a nuclear option to do it, and now I'm wondering if the fallout makes me the bad guy. So Reddit, I have to ask. Am I the idiot for using money to force my parents to respect my boundaries? Story 4. For 5 years, apartment 4B was my sanctuary. It wasn't huge, it wasn't fancy, but it was quiet. It was the one place in the entire sprawling city I could come home to shut the door and just breathe. The walls were thick enough that you barely knew you had neighbors. It was perfect. Then 4A got new tenants. I first saw them on a Saturday. I was coming back from a grocery run, and the hallway was choked with boxes. A guy who looked to be in his late 20s, all frantic energy and messy hair, was trying to direct movers while simultaneously wrangling 3 of the tiniest human beings I'd ever seen. They all looked to be under 4. One was strapped to his chest in a carrier, another was clinging to his leg, and a third, the oldest by maybe a year, was systematically pulling books out of a box and throwing them down the hall. My first thought was, oh, that poor man. A single dad with 3 toddlers. My heart went out to him. I smiled, offered to hold the door, and told him to let me know if he needed anything. He gave me a harried, grateful nod. The sympathy lasted about 48 hours. That's when the screaming started. And I don't mean crying. I don't mean the fussy whimpers of a tired baby. I mean top of the lungs, air raid siren, ear-piercing shrieking. It wasn't occasional. It was a constant. I started counting. 10, 12, sometimes 15 distinct full-blown tantrums a day. They were raw animal sounds of pure unchecked rage. It was the soundtrack to my life. I'd wake up to screaming at 7 a.m. I'd try to work on my dissertation proposal, and the shrieks would slice right through my concentration. I'd be on a Zoom call, frantically hitting the mute button as a blood-curdling scream erupted from next door, hoping my colleagues thought it was just a passing ambulance. My home, my one quiet place, had become an acoustic torture chamber. At first, I told myself to be patient. They're just kids. They're adjusting to a new place. He's a single dad, he's overwhelmed. I gave him a month. Then 2. By month 3, my patience had been ground down to a fine bitter powder. The problem wasn't just the kids. It was him. Through the thin wood of his apartment door, which he often left ajar, I could hear the sounds of intense video games. Explosions, gunfire, shouted commands to teammates. A few times I'd walk past and catch a glimpse inside. And there he'd be, parked in front of a massive TV. A huge pair of noise-canceling headphones clamped over his ears, completely zoned in. Oblivious. While one of his children was having a full-scale, vein-popping meltdown 3 feet away from him, he was off in some digital fantasy world. He wasn't overwhelmed. He was checked out. He was using the headphones to block out the very noise that was making my apartment uninhabitable. The screaming wasn't a problem he was struggling to solve. It was a problem he was actively ignoring. My sympathy curdled into resentment. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I had a huge paper due, a cornerstone of my graduate program, and I simply could not think. Every time I managed to stitch a coherent sentence together, another shriek from next door would rip it apart. It was like trying to build a house of cards during an earthquake. I couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't going to yell, I wasn't going to be a monster. I would be reasonable. I would be the polite, concerned neighbor. I took out a piece of nice stationery and my best pen. I spent 20 minutes crafting the perfect non-confrontational message. Asterisk hi. Neighbor. Asterisk. Asterisk. Welcome to the building. Just wanted to give you a friendly heads up, the walls in this part of the building can be surprisingly thin. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the noise from your apartment, especially the screaming, carries over very clearly. Asterisk. Asterisk, I work from home, and it's become very difficult to concentrate. I would be so grateful if you could try to keep the noise level down. Asterisk. Asterisk. Thanks so much, asterisk. Asterisk, your neighbor in 4B asterisk. It was polite. It was anonymous. It was perfect. I folded it, put it in an envelope, and walked to his door. My heart was pounding as I taped it right at his eye level. I scurried back to my apartment, feeling a weird mix of terror and relief. But the anxiety wouldn't go away. Had I done the right thing, I typed out the text of my note and posted it anonymously to a community forum online asking for opinions. The feedback was a war. You're a monster. They are literal children. Have some empathy. Passive-aggressive notes are the worst. Be an adult and talk to him. Then the other side. You have a right to the peaceful enjoyment of your home. What you did was perfectly reasonable. The dad is the one at fault here. He's ignoring his kids and letting them terrorize the building. The note was too nice. The comments tore me apart. The guilt trippers got to me. What if he was really struggling? And my note was the thing that pushed him over the edge. What if I was just the cranky, childless woman who couldn't stand the sound of kids? I couldn't stand it. After an hour of watching the online debate rage, I made a decision. I crept out of my apartment, my stomach in knots. I looked both ways down the empty hall, then quickly and quietly peeled the note from his door, ripping it in my haste. I retreated back inside my mission of failure. Fine, I muttered to the empty room. I'll suck it up. I went online and ordered the best noise-canceling headphones. I could find the kind that cost more than my monthly electric bill. They would be my new solution. I would de-escalate internally. I would be the bigger person. The headphones arrived the next day. I put them on, queued up some white noise, and sat down at my desk determined to salvage my paper. For a few minutes there was peace. Then I felt it more than heard it, a low vibration through the floorboards. I pulled one ear of the headphones off. It was coming from the hallway. A child was standing directly in front of my door screaming. A full-throated, rage-filled shriek that seemed to go on forever. It finally stopped, and I heard the father's voice, not correcting, just murmuring something unintelligible. Then the door to 4A clicked shut. I took a deep breath. Asterisk. It's fine. It was a one-time thing. Asterisk. 10 minutes later it happened again. Same spot. A different child, a different pitch of scream, but just as loud, just as close. It echoed in the narrow corridor. Again the father's placid voice, the click of his door. I was trying to stay calm, I really was. But my blood pressure was rising. My sanctuary was now under direct assault. A third time. Not even 5 minutes had passed. This one was a duet, two of them wailing in horrific harmony, their small bodies practically pressed against my door. It sounded like they were in the room with me. My hands were shaking. I ripped the expensive new headphones off my head and threw them on the desk. This wasn't just him ignoring the noise anymore. This was an invasion. Then came the fourth scream. It was louder, longer, and more defiant than all the others combined. It wasn't a sound of pain or sadness. It was a weapon, and it was aimed directly at me. That was it. The line wasn't just crossed. It had been incinerated. I wrenched my door open. The force of it made the little girl, the oldest one, flinch and stop mid-shriek. She stared at me with wide, tear-streaked eyes. Her brother, a tiny thing in a dinosaur onesie, was still wailing. Their father stood in his open doorway, phone in hand, looking not at his screaming children, but at me. His expression was one of pure, bored annoyance. "Excuse me," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Could you please not let them do this directly in front of my door?" He pocketed his phone and took a step into the hall, deliberately putting himself between me and the kids. He was taller than I'd realized, and he used it to loom. It's a hallway. It's a common area. It's been 4 times in the last hour, I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts. I can't hear myself think. I'm trying to work in here. He actually scoffed. A dismissive, arrogant little puff of air. They're kids. This is what they do. I'm not locking them in a cage. No one is asking you to, I shot back. I am asking you to show a basic level of consideration and not let them have meltdowns 2 feet from my front door. A smirk played on his lips. It was the look of a man who knew he was getting away with something and enjoyed it immensely. They can scream wherever they want to scream. This isn't your private property. Then he delivered the line that sealed his fate. If you have a problem with it, contact building management. It's what they're there for. He turned his back on me, a clear dismissal. But then he did something so outrageous, so beyond the pale, that I couldn't believe it was happening. He looked down at his 2 silent, staring children. "Go on," he said, his voice now a cheerful, encouraging coo. "You can be as loud as you want. The lady doesn't like it." He looked over his shoulder and gave me a final triumphant sneer. The oldest girl, taking her cue, looked right at me, took a deep theatrical breath, and unleashed a shriek so piercing and deliberate it felt like a physical blow. The little one immediately joined in a 2-toddler chorus of weaponized noise. The father herded his triumphant, screaming children back into his apartment and shut the door. The lock clicked into place. I stood in my own doorway, heart hammering against my ribs, listening to the muffled, victorious shrieks from next door. The rage was a white-hot fire in my chest. All my guilt, all my attempts at empathy, all my be the bigger person. Nonsense evaporated. It was gone. He was right about one thing. It was time to contact management. I slammed my doorstop to my kitchen counter and found the emergency contact magnet on my fridge. My hands were shaking so hard I had to dial the number for our building manager, Mr. Davies, twice. "Mr. Davies, hello, this is Susan in 4B. "Susan? Everything all right?" His voice was kind and grandfatherly. I took a breath. "Not exactly. I'm having a serious issue with my new neighbor in 4A. I explained the constant screaming for the past 3 months, my attempts to ignore it, and then I detailed word for word the encounter that had just happened in the hallway. I didn't embellish. I didn't need to. When I got to the part where he actively encouraged his children to scream, there was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. "Let me get this straight," Mr. Davies said. Finally, his friendly tone gone, replaced by something cold and hard. "You politely asked him to control his children in the common hallway. He told you to contact me. And then he instructed his children to be louder." "Yes," I said, my voice cracking with adrenaline. That is exactly what happened. I am so sorry you're dealing with that, Susan. That is unacceptable. It was the unacceptable that did it. The pure, unadulterated validation. He wasn't appalled by the noise. He was appalled by the man. I will handle this immediately. This is a clear violation of the right to quiet enjoyment clause. I'll call him right now and schedule a mandatory meeting for tomorrow morning. I felt a wave of relief so powerful my knees went weak. Thank you. Thank you so much. The next morning, I worked with one ear cocked toward the hallway. The apartment next door was eerily quiet. 10 a.m. The scheduled meeting time came and went. At 1030, my email pinged. It was from Mr. Davies. Asterisk subject update re 4. A asterisk. Susan, asterisk the tenant in 4A did not appear for our scheduled meeting. He is not answering his phone or the door. In light of this and the severity of the incident you reported, we are moving forward immediately. A formal cure or quit notice is being delivered, and we have begun the legal eviction process for multiple severe lease violations. Please continue to document any further disturbances. Asterisk. Asterisk. Regards asterisk. M. Davies. I read the email 3 times. Eviction process. It was happening. For the rest of the day, I heard nothing from 4A. No tantrums, no video games. It was like the apartment was empty. He was hiding. That night, unable to sleep, I was scrolling through the same community forum where I'd agonized over my note, and then I saw it. A new post from an anonymous user, but I knew. I knew instantly it was him. The post read, asterisk, so the miserable old hag who lives next to me tried complaining about my kids being kids. Seriously. She had the nerve to tell me they can't make noise in the hallway. I told her to cry to management and then told my kids to give her a real show, and they did so proud. Now management is leaving scary notes on my door and trying to schedule meetings. LOL. I'm just gonna lay low, order some pizza, and crank up the PS5. They'll get bored eventually. Some people just need to get a life and let kids be kids. Number dad life. Number haters gonna hate asterisk. It was so breathtakingly stupid, so arrogant, so self-incriminating I almost laughed. He was confessing to everything and bragging about it. I took a screenshot. I attached it to a new email. Asterisk. Subject. FWD proof. Asterisk. Mr. Davies. Asterisk. I believe your tenant from 4A has decided to publicly document the incident himself. Please see attached. Asterisk. Best. And Susan. The reply came back in less than 5 minutes. Asterisk. Thank you, Susan. This has been added to his file. The legal team will be very interested to see it. Asterisk. The comments on his post were a bloodbath. The same people who had called me a monster for my polite note were now absolutely savaging him. You idiot, you harassed your neighbor and are now bragging about it online. You deserve to be evicted. This isn't letting kids be kids. This is letting your feral children annoy everyone while you ignore them and play video games. You're the one who needs to get a life. The post was deleted within an hour. but it was too late. The damage was done. For the next 2 weeks, 4A was a ghost ship. I'd hear faint movements now, and then the occasional muffled cry quickly shushed, but the reign of terror was over. The moving truck that came at the end of the month was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I watched from my window as he loaded his boxes, juggling the 3 silent, bewildered children. He never looked in my direction. He just packed his things and left a man undone by his own belligerent pride. That evening, I sat at my desk in the profound, unbroken silence. My expensive noise-canceling headphones sat on the corner of the desk, still in their box, untouched. I didn't need them anymore. My sanctuary was my own again. Story 5. For 9 years, I've been the constant. I'm the guy who taught Jay how to ride a bike without training wheels, the one who sat through every god-awful school play, the one who paid for the braces her real dad promised and then forgot. For 9 years, I've loved her like she was my own. And for 9 years, Jay has kept a loaded gun pointed at my chest, chambering the same 6 words every time her biological father, Mark, flaked. "You're not my real dad." She used it like a get-out-of-jail-free card. I'd ask her to clean her room after Mark missed a weekend pickup. "You can't tell me what to do. You're not my real dad." I'd ground her for sneaking out. "I'm calling my dad. My times, real times, dad." My wife Sarah would just sigh and give me that look. The times, please be the bigger person times look. And I always was. I'd swallow the bitterness, absorb the blow, and keep on being the reliable, boring always. Their guy who paid the bills. But 16 is different. A 16th birthday is a milestone. And Mark, true to form, had promised the moon. He was going to fly and take her to a fancy dinner and give her the keys to a brand new car, a promise so absurd I didn't even bother warning her it was a lie. Jay spent 2 months vibrating with an excitement she never showed for anything I did. She planned her outfit. She booked the restaurant. She talked about nothing else. The day of her birthday, I grilled steaks in the backyard, while Sarah arranged a ridiculous number of balloons in the living room. Jay was glued to her phone, perched on the edge of the couch, watching the front door like a hawk. "He lands in an hour," she announced to no one in particular. "His flight from Denver." I flipped a steak. "That's great, Jay." An hour passed. Then 2. The sun started to dip below the neighbor's roof, casting long shadows across the lawn. The steaks were getting cold. Jay's manic texting had slowed to a dead stop. Her face, once bright with anticipation, was hardening into a familiar brittle mask. Sarah tried first. "Honey, maybe his flight was delayed. Traffic from the airport is terrible." Jay just shook her head, her eyes locked on the dark screen of her phone. She called him a dozen times. Each one went straight to voicemail. I brought a plate inside. "Jay, let's eat. Your dad will get here when he gets here." That's when the first tear slipped. It traced a path through her foundation, and she swiped it away with a vicious motion. Then came another. Soon her shoulders were shaking, the quiet sobs of someone trying desperately not to fall apart. It was a sound I knew all too well. I put the plate on the coffee table and sat on the arm of the couch, my hand hovering over her back. This was the routine. Mark disappoints, I comfort, she lashes out, we move on. "I'm sorry, sweetie," I said, my voice soft. I finally rested my hand on her shoulder. She flinched like I'd burned her. She spun around, her face a mess of tears and smeared mascara, her eyes blazing with a hatred that was years in the making. It wasn't just disappointment this time. It was pure distilled rage, and it was all pointed at me. "Don't touch me," she shrieked, scrambling away. "Don't you dare act like you care. He was supposed to be here. He promised." I know he did, I said, holding my hands up in surrender. It's okay to be upset. It's not okay. She screamed, her voice cracking. None of this is okay. You love this, don't you? You love when he doesn't show up because then you get to play the hero. Sarah stood up. Jay, that's not fair. Owen was just trying to. Stay out of it, Jay wheeled on her mother before turning back to me, jabbing a finger in my direction. The final nuclear option. The word she saved for when she wanted to inflict maximum damage. God, you're not even my real dad anyway, she spat, the words dripping with venom. Stop trying to act like it. And then, something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud crack, but a quiet, clean break. 9 years of swallowing my pride, of taking the hits, of being the bigger person, it all just crumbled. I looked at this screaming, crying teenager who I had tucked in at night and helped with homework and held when she was sick. And I didn't see the hurt little girl anymore. I saw the weapon she was holding. And I was done being her target. I stood up, my face completely blank. I didn't say a word. I just walked past her, past Sarah's shocked face, and went upstairs to our bedroom. I closed the door, and the sound of her sobbing eventually faded. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in silent warfare. I was a ghost in my own house. I got up before anyone else went to work, came home late, and ate dinner in my home office. I was polite but empty. I'd answer Sarah's questions with one-word responses. I didn't ask Jay about her day. I didn't look at her when we passed in the hall. The warmth I had injected into the home for nearly a decade was gone, and the chill was palpable. Sarah tried to breach the wall a few times. Owen, you have to talk to her, she'd plead. She's miserable. She regrets what she said. Does she? I'd reply, not looking up from my laptop. Has she said that to me? The answer was always no. I wasn't angry anymore. The searing heat from her birthday outburst had cooled into something hard and heavy in my gut. It was resolve. I was done. Done being the emotional punching bag. Done being the reliable ATM who got treated like a stranger. If I wasn't her real dad, then I would stop acting like it. Tonight, I was on the couch watching a game, the house quiet. Sarah was at her book club. Jay was upstairs, probably on FaceTime with her friends, the birthday drama. Now just old news. For the first time in 2 weeks, the tension had eased, replaced by a cold, functional quiet. It wasn't a home, but it was survivable. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, hesitant. Jay appeared in the doorway to the living room. She was avoiding my eyes, looking at her fuzzy socks, shifting her weight from foot to foot. She was holding her phone in one hand and nervously picking at the case with the other. The silence stretched thick and uncomfortable. Finally, she took a breath. She looked up, her expression a careful mixture of nonchalance and nerves. Hey, she said, her voice small. So me and Chloe and them are going to the mall this weekend, and she trailed off, clearing her throat. She took another step into the room, her hand already sliding into her pocket. There's this really cute top at Zara. I didn't move. I didn't even turn my head. I just kept my eyes on the basketball game, watching tiny men run back and forth on the screen. The sound of her voice, so casual, so completely oblivious, was like gasoline on a pilot light I didn't know was still burning. Okay, I said, my voice flat. She shifted again. Well, I was wondering if I could get like $50 for the top and maybe some food court pretzels. 9 years. 9 years of her using those 6 words to cut me down, and here she was 2 weeks after delivering the most venomous version, yet asking for cash for mall pretzels. Not an apology. Not a "hey, are we okay?" Just an open hand expecting the ATM to dispense as usual. The quiet, clean break inside me sharpened into a razor's edge. I finally turned my head slowly and looked at her. Really looked at her. There was no remorse in her eyes. No guilt. Just the mild impatience of a teenager waiting for a transaction to be completed. I set my beer down on the coaster with a deliberate click. "You know," I began, my voice dangerously calm, "that's a really good question for your dad." Jay blinked. Confusion flickered across her face. "What Marquis in Denver?" "I know," I said, leaning forward slightly. The cold resolve in my gut had found its voice. "But you should ask him. Your time's real time's dad." I let the words hang in the air between us. I watched her process them, watched the nonchalant expression crumble as she replayed what I'd said. It was like watching a dam break in slow motion. Her eyes widened. Her mouth fell open, and the color drained from her face. She finally understood. I wasn't playing the game anymore. I was using her rules. "Why don't you ask your real dad for money?" I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, but each word as clear and hard as a diamond, "because you constantly remind me I'm not him." The first tear was instantaneous. It was followed by a sharp, wounded gasp, as if I'd physically struck her. Her face twisted into a mask of pure shock and hurt. This wasn't the angry, theatrical crying from her birthday. This was the quiet, broken sobbing of someone who had just been gut-punched. She didn't say a word. She couldn't. She just spun around and fled up the stairs, her footsteps heavy and frantic. A moment later, I heard her bedroom door slam shut, the sound echoing through the cold, silent house. I stared at the empty doorway, my heart hammering against my ribs. I felt a sick, hollow feeling in my stomach, but underneath it there was something else. A grim, terrifying sense of rightness. The line had been drawn. An hour later, Sarah came home. I heard her keys in the lock, her footsteps, then the pause, as she must have sensed the Arctic atmosphere. She found me in the exact same spot, staring at a TV that was now just broadcasting post-game analysis. "What happened?" she asked, her voice tight. "Jay's in her room, hysterical. She won't talk to me." I didn't look at her. I just took a long pull from my beer. "She asked me for money." "Okay," Sarah prompted, setting her purse down. And I told her to ask her real dad for it. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. I could feel Sarah's eyes on me, could feel the judgment radiating from her. "Oh," and she finally said, her voice strained. "You didn't." "I did," I confirmed, finally meeting her gaze. "I used her own words, Sarah. The same words she uses to stab me every single time she gets a chance." She sank onto the arm of the chair opposite me, rubbing her temples. "I know what she said was horrible. I know she has been awful to you, and God, you don't deserve any of it. But to throw it back in her face like that, she's a 16-year-old kid who was hurting. And I'm the 42-year-old man who's been her punching bag for a decade." I shot back, my voice rising. "When does it stop? When do I get to stop being the bigger person? She doesn't see me as a father. She sees me as a wallet and a chauffeur who she can abuse whenever her fantasy dad lets her down. I'm done. So this is your solution? Cruelty. It's not cruelty. It's a consequence." I stood up, pacing the small space in front of the fireplace. She finally got one. For the first time in her life, she said her magic words, and they didn't work. They blew up in her face. Maybe now she'll think twice before she pulls the trigger again. Or maybe Sarah said, her voice trembling, you've just confirmed what she's always felt. That you're not her dad. That your love is conditional. Her words hit me harder than Jay's ever had. I stopped pacing and just stared at her, a fresh wave of isolation washing over me. You still don't get it, I said quietly. You're still defending her. I walked out of the room, grabbing my jacket from the hook by the door. I needed air. I needed to be somewhere that didn't feel like enemy territory. I ended up at a bar near my office, a place with dark wood and sticky floors. I called my best friend Mike. I laid out the whole story from the birthday to the showdown on the couch, expecting some kind of validation. So you said that to her? Mike asked after I finished, a note of disbelief in his voice. Yeah. Word for word. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Dude, he finally said. You're an idiot. What? Why? Because she's a kid, Owen. A pissed off, heartbroken teenage girl. You're the adult. You don't use a nuclear weapon because a kid throws a rock at you. You just proved her right. You acted like a stepdad, not a dad. She's been throwing rocks for 9 years, Mike. I get it, it sucks. But that's the gig you signed up for. You love the mom, you take the shit from the kid until they grow up and figure it out. You don't pour salt in the wound. Man, you screwed this up. He kept talking, but I tuned him out. I hung up the phone and ordered another whiskey. Sarah thought I was cruel. Mike thought I was an idiot. Jay was probably crying in her room, feeling completely justified in her hatred of me. I was utterly alone in this. I sat there for another hour. The ice in my glass melting, the voices in my head arguing in a vicious circle. Was it cruel? Yes. The look on her face confirmed it. Was it a mistake? Probably. A real dad might have absorbed the blow and offered a hug. But as the whiskey warmed my veins, that grim sense of necessity returned. I wasn't her real dad. She had made that painfully abundantly clear. For 9 years, I had tried to be. I had done all the things a real dad does, hoping one day the title would stick. It never did. Tonight I just stopped pretending. I held up a mirror and showed her exactly what her words felt like. It was ugly and it was painful, but it was honest. It was revenge not on her, but on the lie we had all been living. I paid my tab and walked out into the cold night air. I didn't know what I was going home to. A silent wife. A stepdaughter who hated me more than ever. I had no idea how to fix this, or if it could even be fixed. But for the first time in 9 years, the rules of engagement were clear. The punching bag was officially retired. Story 6.
6 years. That's how long it took to scrape the memory of that day off the inside of my skull. For 6 years, I'd been the one who got left at the altar. It was a brand seared onto my identity in my hometown. Marek, my high school sweetheart, had left me a note in the church vestibule. A 3-sentence masterpiece of cowardice that boiled down to times, I'm sorry, I'm in love with someone else, and she's pregnant. Asterisk. My family was my lifeboat. My parents, my aunt, and especially my younger sister, Clara. She was the one who held my hand while I dry heaved into a toilet, my $5,000 wedding dress pooled around my knees. She was the one who boxed up every picture of Mark and threw them into a bonfire in our backyard. She helped me rebuild. Now it was her turn. And she was doing it right. Her fiancé Liam was a solid guy. A genuinely good man who looked at her like she'd hung the moon. The only problem was money. They were young, renting a tiny apartment, and trying to build a life on 2 entry-level salaries. A big wedding was a fantasy, which is how we ended up in a bridal boutique that smelled like champagne and anxiety. Clara stood in front of a 3-way mirror, a vision in layers of silk and lace. It was the Times dress. The one she'd bookmarked 100 times, the one pinned to the top of her secret Pinterest board. It had delicate hand-stitched flowers cascading down the bodice and a train that seemed to go on for miles. It was perfect. It was also $7,000. I watched her face crumble as she looked at the price tag. The light in her eyes just went out. "Well," she whispered, her voice cracking. It was fun to pretend. She started to fumble with the zipper. "Wait," I said, stepping forward. I saw my own ghost in that mirror, a younger me giddy with a hope that was about to be obliterated. I had my own dream dress now sealed in a vacuum bag in my attic like a piece of toxic evidence. Maybe I could turn that poison into medicine for her. "What do you mean, wait?" Clara asked, her eyes already welling up. "Helen, there's no way." "Consider it my wedding gift," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "The whole thing. I'll buy it for you." The boutique fell silent. Clara froze. Then her face completely dissolved into tears. Not the sad, defeated tears from a moment ago, but a tidal wave of pure, unadulterated joy. She threw her arms around me, lace and tulle and all. "Are you serious?" she sobbed into my shoulder. "Helen, you can't. It's too much." "I can," I said, hugging her tight. "And I want to. You deserve to feel like a princess. No compromises." It was the best money I'd ever spent. Mom cried. The sales associate cried. The whole thing was a made-for-TV movie moment. For the next few weeks, I was the family hero. My generosity was the main topic of conversation. It felt good. It felt like I was finally closing a painful chapter and using my hard-earned success to create a beautiful new one for my sister. The deposit was paid. The dress was ordered. Everything was perfect. Until last night's family dinner. It was a casual Sunday thing at my parents' house. Me, Mom, Dad, Clara, and Liam, and my Aunt Carol. The air was thick with wedding talk, centerpieces, cake flavors, seating charts. I was sipping my wine, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the alcohol. I was genuinely happy for her. Dad was grilling Liam about pre-wedding jitters. "You getting cold feet yet, son?" he asked, winking. Liam laughed, grabbing Clara's hand. "Not a chance. Just nervous about tripping over my own feet when I see her walking down the aisle." It was sweet. Everyone smiled. Clara, a little flushed from her second glass of wine, let out a loud theatrical laugh. "Yeah, well, just make sure you actually show up," she said, her voice glib. A weird little knot tightened in my stomach. She wasn't done. She waved her fork in the air, a smirk playing on her lips. "Let's just hope he won't run away with a pregnant mistress or something." The words hit the air and hung there thick and toxic. My fork clattered against my plate. The sound was like a gunshot in the sudden silence. She hadn't just made a joke. She had recited almost word for word the single most traumatic event of my life. The line I had screamed at her through hysterical tears 6 years ago. Asterisk. "He left me for his pregnant mistress, Clara." Asterisk. My Aunt Carol broke the spell. She let out a sharp, barking laugh. "Oh, Clara, that's just awful," she cackled, slapping the table. The warmth I'd felt moments before vanished, replaced by a glacial cold that started in my chest and spread through my limbs. The lively dining room, the smell of roast chicken, the faces of my family, it all faded into a dull, humming background. All I could see was Mark's handwriting on that crumpled piece of paper. All I could feel was the suffocating weight of that veil. I looked up. Clara was still smiling a little nervously now, watching me, waiting for me to laugh along, waiting for me to validate her joke. My own sister. The one I just handed a $7,000 dream to, and she was using my nightmare as a punchline for a cheap laugh. My mother's face was a mask of strained pleasantry. Clara, don't be morbid, she chided gently. My father cleared his throat. Helen, honey, she was just kidding around. But I wasn't listening. The blood was pounding in my ears, a furious drumbeat of betrayal. I stared across the table right into my sister's eyes. The smirk was gone, replaced by a flicker of dawning horror as she finally registered the look on my face. She knew what she'd done. And in that one shattering moment, something inside me finally broke. My voice was quiet, but it sliced through the room. What did you just say? Claire's face went white. The smirk was gone, replaced by a panicked, flickering guilt. Helen, It was just a joke. A stupid joke. A joke, I repeated, the word tasting like poison. I pushed my chair back, the legs screeching against the hardwood floor. Everyone flinched. You think that's a joke? Helen, honey, calm down, my father started, raising his hands in a placating gesture. She didn't mean it. I didn't even look at him. My eyes were locked on my sister. You stood there in that boutique and you cried in my arms. You said I was the most generous person you knew. Was that a joke too? Were you laughing at me then, thinking about how you could use the story of my life's biggest humiliation for a cheap laugh later? Tears started to stream down Clara's face. They weren't the tears of joy from the bridal shop. These were the panicked, selfish tears of someone who'd just been caught. No, of course not. I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking. That's the problem, Clara. You never think I was on my feet now, my whole body vibrating with a rage I hadn't felt in 6 years. It was the rage I should have felt at Mark, but had instead turned inward. Now it had a target. You took the single most painful day of my life, a day you supposedly helped me survive, and you served it up like an appetizer. You and Aunt Carol cackling like hyenas. Aunt Carol looked down at her plate, suddenly fascinated by her mashed potatoes. That is enough, my mother said, her voice sharp. You are making a scene, Helen. Apologize to your aunt. I laughed. A raw, ugly sound that had no humor in it. Apologize? Are you kidding me? I grabbed my purse from the floor and my keys from the counter. The metallic jingle was the only sound in the dead silent room. Clara stood up, her hands outstretched. Helen, please don't go. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. Please. I walked to the door, my back to all of them. I could feel their eyes on me, could feel the weight of their collective judgment. They wanted me to be the bigger person. To swallow the pain, smooth things over, and let Clara have her perfect wedding. Just like they wanted me to get over Mark and stop being the one who got left at the altar. I paused with my hand on the doorknob and turned my head just enough to look at my sister. Her face was a mess of tears and makeup, her mouth trembling. She looked pathetic. And for the first time, I felt nothing. No pity, no empathy. Just a cold, hard finality. You can think about how sorry you are while you're shopping for a dress you can actually afford, I said, my voice flat and empty. Because as of right now, you are getting $0 from me. I didn't wait for a reaction. I walked out and pulled the door shut behind me, the click of the latch sounding like a gavel. I made it halfway to my car before the front door flew open again. Helen, it was my dad, his voice booming into the quiet suburban street. Get back here. This is absurd. I ignored him, fumbling with my keys, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't get the key into the lock. He caught up to me just as I got the door open, his hand landing on the roof of the car with a heavy thud. You're going to walk out on your family over a bad joke, he demanded, his face ruddy with anger. A bad joke. I finally got the car door open and slid inside, but he held it so I couldn't close it. Dad, she took a knife and twisted it into the deepest wound I have. And you're all defending her. Nobody's defending her. We're trying to keep the peace. She's in there sobbing, completely hysterical. Good, I said, jamming the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life. Don't be so cruel, he snapped. She's your sister. She's devastated about the dress. All she can talk about is how she's going to lose the dress. Is that what you want? To ruin her wedding? His words hit me harder than Clara's joke. It wasn't about my pain. It wasn't about the betrayal. It was about the dress. About the wedding. About preserving the perfect family fantasy. I was just a line item, a check that was suddenly refusing to be cashed. I looked at him, my father, the man who was supposed to protect me. She's the one who was cruel. She took my generosity and threw it back in my face. This isn't about the money anymore, Dad. It's about respect. A respect she obviously doesn't have for me. That's ridiculous. It's dark humor. It's how kids these days talk. I'm not a kid. And that wasn't humor. It was mockery, I said, my voice hardening into something I barely recognized. You taught me to stand up for myself. This is me standing up for myself. I will not pay to have my own trauma used as a punchline in my own family. He sighed a long, weary sound of parental disappointment. Helen, for God's sake, just forgive her. Be the bigger person and pay for the dress. Don't let one stupid comment destroy your relationship with your sister. Our relationship is already destroyed, I said. She destroyed it tonight. Not me. I put the car in reverse. He finally took his hand off the door. I looked at him one last time, standing there under the porch light, his face a mixture of anger and disbelief. He didn't get it. He never would. Tell Clara, I said, my voice, as cold as the night air, that forgiveness is free. But a dream wedding dress cost $7,000. I didn't look back as I pulled out of the driveway. My phone was already buzzing in my purse. A text from Clara. Then another from my mom. Then a call. I silenced it, tossing it onto the passenger seat. They could leave all the messages they wanted. Let them call me harsh. Let them call me cruel. For the first time in 6 years, I wasn't the victim in my own story. And that felt better than any dress money could buy.
Story 7.
The wedding is my gift to you. The words felt good coming out of my mouth. Big brotherly generous. My sister Beth was sitting across from me at a coffee shop, her new engagement ring catching the light every time she gestured, which was a lot. At 32, she'd finally found her guy, and I was genuinely happy for her. I'll plan the whole thing start to finish, I continued. No fee. My time, my connections, my expertise, it's all yours. I'm a wedding planner. At 25, I'm good at it too. I built a solid business from the ground up, and my calendar is a nightmare of color-coded bookings. Beth's October wedding date fell squarely in my busiest, most lucrative season. Gifting her my services meant turning down at least 2, maybe 3 full coordination packages. It was a 5-figure gift, easy. Oh my God, Ash, really? She clapped her hands together. That's amazing. It'll save us so much money. The first red flag. She heard free, not gift. But I let it slide. I was happy for her. For the first month, things were fine. We toured venues. I called in a massive favor and got her a 20% discount on a gorgeous historical estate she loved. That alone saved her $5,000. We talked color palettes and catering. It was collaborative. It was fun. Then the shift happened. A switch flipped, and my sweet, reasonable sister was replaced by a creature of pure, unfiltered stress, Bridezilla Beth. It started with the invitations. I'd curated a dozen mock-ups from a designer I work with, all based on the rustic elegance theme she'd described. I don't know, she said, frowning at the proofs I'd laid out on her dining table. The font on this one feels angry. Angry. And this one, she said, pointing to another, the paper is too papery. We went back and forth for 3 weeks. Every day, a new text. Asterisk. What about sage green instead of olive times? A day later times. Actually, olive was better. Let's go back. Asterisk. Then times. Can we see a version where the font is cursive but not TOO cursive? Times. I spent hours on the phone with the designer, apologizing, cajoling, and eating the cost of the extra revisions myself. The real chaos started with the photographer. I pulled my biggest string. I got her Chloe Vaughn. Chloe usually has a 2-year waiting list and a price tag that could buy a decent sedan. I got Beth a friends and family rate that was practically theft, on the condition that Beth be low maintenance and organized. All she needs from you is the final timeline and a shot list by the 1st of the month. I explained to Beth over the phone. That's it. Super simple. The 1st of the month came and went. I got a call from Chloe a week later. Her tone was ice. Asher, I've emailed your sister 3 times. I've texted twice. If I don't get that timeline by tomorrow, I'm pulling out. I don't care what discount I gave you. This is unprofessional. My stomach dropped. I hung up and immediately called Beth. No answer. I called her fiancé, Mark. Oh yeah, he said casually. She saw the emails. She said she was just super busy this week. Super busy doing what, pinning 400 pictures of identical table centerpieces. I felt a hot flash of anger. I smoothed things over with Chloe, promising her she'd have the list by morning. Then I spent the next 4 hours basically creating the shot list myself, based on our previous conversations, typing up a minute-by-minute schedule of the entire wedding day and emailing it to Beth with the subject line, "Copy and day. Paste this and send it to Chloe. Now." She replied an hour later. Asterisk. THEX, you're a lifesaver, asterisk. I wasn't a lifesaver. I was her unpaid assistant cleaning up messes she shouldn't have been making. I was fielding panicked calls from the caterer because Beth decided she wanted to change from a plated dinner to food trucks 6 weeks before the wedding. I was turning down a potential 6-figure destination wedding in Cabo because the consultation call conflicted with Beth's cake-tasting emergency. My own business was suffering, my paying clients were getting the B-team version of me, and my stress levels were through the roof. But I kept telling myself times, she's your sister. It's your gift. Asterisk. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I was on site for another wedding, juggling a florist who'd brought peonies instead of gardenias, and a groomsman who'd lost the rings. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Beth. Her tone was bubbly, a complete 180 from the tear-filled call I'd gotten an hour earlier about the potential for rain. Hey Ash, quick question, she chirped. Mark and I are finalizing the registry. We just wanted to give you first dibs on one of the big ticket items before we send the link out to everyone else. I stopped in the middle of the hallway, the frantic energy of the wedding around me fading to a dull hum. I must have misheard her. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice flat. The registry, our gift registry. There's a really cool espresso machine or the honeymoon fund. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice even. Beth. My gift is planning the wedding, the entire wedding. For free. She laughed. It was a light, dismissive little sound that made the hairs on my arms stand up. Oh, that's sweet, Ash, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. But that's just you. Doing your job. That's not really a times gift, asterisk. The world tilted. Not a gift, Beth. My fee for a wedding this size is $20,000. I've gotten you discounts that have saved you another $10,000. That's a $30,000 gift. Well, you're not actually paying times for anything, are you? She retorted, her voice hardening. It's not like you wrote a check for the venue. That just feels... it just feels a little cheap. for my own brother not to get us a real present. Cheap. The word echoed in the silent hallway. All the sleepless nights, the lost income, the frantic damage control, all of it erased and branded as cheap. I have to go. I set my jaw so tight I could barely speak. I hung up before she could reply. I stood there for a full minute, phone in my hand, my mind a blank wall of white-hot rage. Then my phone buzzed again. A text. It was from her mom. Asterisk. Asher, Beth just called me very upset. What is this I hear about you refusing to buy her a wedding gift? Asterisk. Another buzz. A group chat with my aunts and uncles. My Uncle Mike times heard you're stiffing your sister on a gift. Not a good look, kid. Asterisk. My phone kept buzzing, one message after another, a tidal wave of judgment from people who had no idea what I'd been doing for the last 6 months. She hadn't just insulted me. She'd gone on the offensive. She'd twisted the story and painted me as the villain to our entire family in under 10 minutes. My jaw tightened. She hadn't just dismissed me. She'd declared war. Okay, she wanted war. I'd give her a spreadsheet. I drove home from the wedding venue on autopilot, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The buzz of my phone was a constant mocking vibration in my pocket. I ignored it. Back in my apartment, I threw my keys on the counter, bypassed the fridge, and went straight to my laptop. My hands were shaking not with anger anymore, but with a cold, focused fury. I opened a blank document. Title Times, Beth and Mark's Wedding, Gift Ledger, and Cost Savings Analysis. Asterisk. For the next 2 hours, I didn't just work. I performed a forensic accounting of my own misery. Every email. Every phone call. Every hour I'd spent placating a vendor or calming Beth down from a non-existent crisis. It all went on to the list. Asterisk, asterisk. Initial consultation and venue scouting. 8 hours at $250. HR, $2. 000. Asterisk. 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 Vendor negotiation and booking. 15 hours at $250. HR, $3. 750. Asterisk. 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 Venue discount, secured exclusive, partner rate, -$5, 120, asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk. Invitation design rework, 4 revisions, 6 hours, $1, 500. Absorbed cost asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk. Photographer crisis management, Chloe Vaughn, 4 hours. Value priceless. But let's call it $1. 000. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Timeline and shot list. Creation. Last minute, 4 hours at $250. HR, $1, 000. Asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk. Food truck logistics post-contract menu. Change 5 hours at $250. HR $1, 250. Asterisk. The list went on. Page after page. I tracked the hours, the negotiated savings, the after-hours calls. At the bottom of page 3, I put my standard full-service wedding coordination fee. It was the number I quoted clients who wanted the moon, the stars, and a dove released synchronized to a string quartet. Then I added it all up. The next morning, I texted her. Asterisk. We need to talk. My place. 10 a.m. Come alone. Asterisk. She arrived, looking defensive, clutching her purse like a shield. Look, Ash, Mom said you're upset, but I really think you're overreacting. Sit down, I said, pointing to the chair opposite me at my dining table. The only thing on the table was my laptop and a freshly printed 3-page document face down. She sat her jaw tight. This is ridiculous. You're being so dramatic. I didn't say a word. I just flipped the document over and pushed it across the table to her. She picked it up, her brow furrowed in confusion. I watched her eyes scan the first page. I saw them widen slightly at the line item for the venue discount. I saw a flicker of something, annoyance, disbelief, as she read through the hours I'd logged. She scoffed when she got to the part about photographer crisis management. What is this? She finally asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Are you billing me? No, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I'm showing you my gift. The one you called cheap. You seem to have misplaced the receipt, so I printed you a new one. This is insane, Asher. You're trying to make me feel bad. You've been keeping a tally just to throw it in my face. I keep a tally for all my clients, Beth. It's how I run my business. The only difference is they pay me. You turned our family against me. I leaned forward. You cost me a 6-figure contract in Cabo. You nearly torpedoed my relationship with the best photographer in the city. You have been my single most demanding, least appreciative client of the entire year. And you did it all for free. She dropped the papers on the table like they were hot. That's not fair. I'm your sister. Exactly, which is why I did all of this in the first place. My voice finally rose the frustration of months boiling over. Look at the last page, Beth. Look at the bottom line. Her eyes reluctantly dropped back to the document. She flipped to the last page. I had totaled everything, my standard fee, the man hours, billed at my professional rate, the hard dollar discounts I had secured for her. I watched her face as the number registered. It was a visceral reaction. The color drained from her cheeks, her mouth opened slightly. She looked from the paper to me, then back to the paper, as if the ink might have rearranged itself. $37,870, she whispered. The number hung in the air between us, heavy and obscene. That's the value of my gift, I said, my voice softening just a little. That's the check I didn't ask you to write. It's more than your espresso machine. It's more than your entire honeymoon fund. It is by a massive margin the single most expensive and valuable gift you are going to receive. Silence. For the first time in months, my sister was utterly silent. She stared at the paper, tracing a line item with her finger. It was the invitation design rework. The line that ended with absorbed cost. A tear slid down her cheek, then another. The font, she mumbled. The angry font. Yeah, I said. The font? Oh God, she said, burying her face in her hands. Her shoulders started to shake. Ash, I'm so sorry. I didn't see it. I just saw my brother. And I thought, I don't know what I thought. I didn't think about what it was, times costing times you. She looked up, her eyes red and puffy. I was an absolute monster. A bridezilla. I know I was. And then to say that to you? To call you cheap? She shook her head, a fresh wave of tears coming. It was a horrible thing to say. I'm so sorry. It was the apology I needed to hear. The genuine ego-shattering kind. I took a deep breath. Okay. Apology accepted. How do I fix this? She asked, her voice thick. With the family. I was just so angry and I reacted and I made you sound awful. You fix it by telling them the truth, I said, sliding my phone across the table. Right now, in the group chat. She picked it up without hesitation. Her thumbs flew across the screen. A few moments later, my phone buzzed with a notification from the family group chat. Asterisk, Beth. Hey everyone. I need to clear something up and offer my brother a huge public apology. I completely misunderstood the massive scope and value of the wedding planning he's gifting us. He has poured hundreds of hours and saved us tens of thousands of dollars. It's an incredibly generous gift, and I was a complete jerk about it. Ash, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. We are so lucky to have you. Asterisk. My phone immediately started buzzing with replies. Asterisk. Mom, oh honey. That's so good of you to say. Asterisk. Asterisk. Uncle Mike, my mistake, Asher. Sounds like you're the man. Asterisk. Beth pushed my phone back to me, her expression a mix of shame and relief. Is that okay? It's a start, I said. Peace was restored. The wedding planning continued, but with a new dynamic. Bridezilla Beth was gone, replaced by my actual sister. She was decisive, appreciative, and a goddamn delight to work with. The wedding itself went off without a hitch. It was beautiful. On the day, as she was about to walk down the aisle, I handed her a small flat box wrapped in silver paper. She looked at me confused. What's this? Your wedding gift, I said with a slight smile. She opened it. Inside was a simple, elegant silver frame. And in the frame was a single piece of paper, the invoice. Across the bottom I had taken a thick black marker and written in big, bold letters, "Paid in full." She looked at it, then at me, and this time her tears were pure joy. She threw her arms around my neck. "Thank you," she whispered. Yeah, I know. It was a little bit of a dig. A final satisfying twist of the knife. But seeing her laugh through her tears as she hugged me, that was the real gift.
Story 8.
The ceiling fan wobbled. 1, 2, 3 blades blurring into a wobbly circle of white. If I focused on it long enough, the slight nausea churning in my gut would almost feel like motion sickness. Almost normal. A knock on my bedroom door made me jump. "Jackson, are you just going to lie in there all day?" It was my mom. Her voice was already tight, stretched thin like a rubber band about to snap. It was only 11 a.m. "I'm up," I called out, my own voice sounding rough. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and the room tilted violently. I squeezed my eyes shut, gripping the edge of the mattress until the spinning slowed to a gentle sway. This was my life now. A constant low-grade vertigo that doctors shrugged at. Just tired, they'd say. My parents heard lazy. I grabbed my laptop from the floor, flipping it open. The screen glowed with the ghosts of my failures. Indeed.com. LinkedIn. ZipRecruiter. 57 applications sent. 57 little digital missiles launched into the void. I had a spreadsheet to track them. Most rows were blank. 4 had a read or rejected typed in. The rest were just nothing. Crickets. My bedroom door creaked open. Mom stood there, arms crossed, holding a laundry basket against her hip like a shield. "I saw the trash cans are still by the garage," she said. Not a question. Sorry, I was going to get them. I just woke up and felt a little... Don't she cut me off? Don't start with the dizzy thing, Jackson. I'm not in the mood. I'm not making it up, I said, my voice rising. My heart started doing its usual trip hammer thing against my ribs. My head is pounding. Your head is pounding because you sleep until noon and stare at a screen all day, she said, her eyes scanning the clutter of my room. You're 18. I told you if you don't have a job by this month, you start paying rent. Well, it's this month. $300. Due on the 1st. I just stared at her. With what money? I'm trying. You see me on here every single day. I see you on there, she corrected. I don't see any results. A job at McDonald's isn't beneath you? A job stocking shelves isn't beneath you? You need to get over yourself and just do something. She left, pulling the door shut behind her with a little too much force. The click of the latch echoed in the silent room. Asterisk. $300. Asterisk. She might as well have asked for $1 million. I had $43 to my name, saved for my last birthday. My hands were shaking. I scrolled through my contacts and hesitated over my dad's name. Calling him was always a gamble. Since the divorce, and especially since he married Carol, our conversations had become minefields. But desperation was a powerful motivator. He answered on the third ring. What's up? Hey, Dad. You got a minute? Making one. Carol and I are heading out to look at patio furniture. What do you need? The impatience was already there. It's about Mom. I started trying to keep my voice steady. She's saying I have to pay rent now, and I don't have it. I'm looking for jobs. I swear I've put in applications everywhere. Your mother told me she was going to do that, he said, his tone flat. It's about time, Jackson. You're an adult. You can't just live off her forever. In the background, I heard Carol's muffled voice. Not our problem. It's not that I want to. I said, my throat tightening. I told you I haven't been feeling well. It's hard to even get out of bed some days. I think I need to see another doctor. A heavy sigh crackled through the phone. We've been through this. The doctor said you're fine. You have anxiety. You know what helps with anxiety? A routine, a purpose, a job. So that's it, you're just siding with her. This isn't about sides. This is about you growing up. Your mother and I are on the same page for once. You need a fire lit under you. A fire lit under me? I couldn't believe it. I feel like crap all the time, and you think the problem is that I'm not motivated enough. Watch your tone, he said sharply. I've got to go. Get a job, Jackson. It's that simple. He hung up. I threw the phone onto my comforter. It bounced once and lay still. Asterisk. On the same page. Asterisk. The two people who were supposed to be in my corner had circled the wagons and I was on the outside. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of anxiety. I filled out 3 more applications, the words on the screen swimming before my eyes. My head throbbed in time with my pulse. I skipped lunch. The thought of facing my mom in the kitchen was worse than the hunger. Around 5, I heard her car pull away. A brief reprieve. I walked out into the living room, blinking in the bright light. The house was quiet. A note was on the counter. Asterisk went to the store. Be back in an hour. The trash better? Be taken in. Asterisk. I grabbed my keys. My old 98 Camry was a piece of junk, but it was mine. I just needed to drive. Clear my head. I got in the car, the cracked leather seats hot from the sun. I put the key in the ignition, turned it, and was met with a series of pathetic clicks. Dead battery. Of course. I slumped back against the headrest, pressing the heels of my hands into my eyes. Everything was closing in. No job, no money, no energy, no escape. When Mom got home, the first thing she saw was me sitting at the kitchen table, head in my hands. The second thing she saw through the window were the trash cans still sitting defiantly at the curb. She dropped the grocery bags on the floor. Oranges and a carton of milk tumbled out and rolled across the linoleum. You have got to be kidding me, she said, her voice dangerously low. The car won't start, I said, looking up at her. I was going to try and jump it. Oh, the car won't start, she mimicked, her voice dripping with scorn. Is that the excuse of the day? Yesterday it was a headache. The day before you were dizzy. I am so sick of the excuses, Jackson. It's one thing. One thing I asked you to do. I'm not making excuses, I shot back, standing up. My car is dead. My body feels like it's dead. I am trying. No, you're not, she screamed, her face turning red. You're not trying. You're waiting. You're waiting for someone to rescue you. For me to just let it go. For your father to swoop in and feel sorry for you. Well, I'm done waiting. She pulled out her phone, her thumb jabbing at the screen. I just talked to your father. We're in agreement. My stomach dropped. Agreement about what? She looked up from her phone, her eyes cold and empty of anything I recognized. You have 1 hour to pack a bag, she said. Get whatever you can fit in your car and get out. I stared, my mouth hanging open. What? You can't be serious. Where am I supposed to go? My car doesn't even start. That sounds like a you problem, she said, turning her back on me to pick up the spilled milk. Your father's house isn't an option. He's done too. Panic, cold and sharp, seized my lungs. I fumbled for my own phone, my fingers like clumsy sausages. I scrolled to Dad's contact and typed, my hands trembling so bad I could barely hit the letters. Asterisk. Mom is kicking me out. Right now. She said I can't come to your place. Is this for real? Asterisk. I hit send. The 3 little dots appeared instantly, taunting me. I held my breath, watching, praying. A moment later, a single devastating text bubble popped up on my screen. The bubble solidified into a single brutal word. Yes. My phone slipped from my sweaty hand and clattered onto the linoleum. The sound was small, insignificant, in the suddenly cavernous kitchen. One word. He didn't even have the decency to type out a full sentence. My mom didn't look at me. She just kept putting her groceries away, her movements stiff and methodical. Cereal box. Can of beans. Carton of eggs. Life for her was continuing as normal. Your hour started when I got home, she said to the inside of the refrigerator. My legs felt like they were filled with wet cement. I managed to stumble back to my room. What do you pack when you're being exiled? I grabbed a duffel bag from the back of my closet and started stuffing it with clothes. T-shirts, jeans, socks. My laptop. Its charger. The portable battery jumper my dad had given me for my 18th birthday. For emergencies, he'd said with a self-satisfied smile, as if he'd just imparted some great fatherly wisdom. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. I zipped the bag, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard the dizziness flared up again. I leaned against my desk, breathing through my nose, focusing on the wobbly ceiling fan one last time. 45 minutes later, I was standing by my car duffel bag slung over my shoulder. Mom stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching. She didn't offer to help. She didn't say goodbye. She just watched her face, a blank mask, as I popped the hood and hooked up the jumper cables. The engine sputtered, caught, and then roared to life with a rattling cough. The sound was both a relief and a death sentence. Now I had no excuse to stay. I threw my bag in the passenger seat and got behind the wheel, not looking at her. I put the car in reverse, my foot trembling on the gas pedal. As I backed out of the driveway, I'd learned to ride a bike in the driveway I'd parked in every day for 2 years. I glanced in the rearview mirror. She was already gone. The front door was shut. The first night, I parked in the back corner of a 2-4-hour Walmart lot. I pushed the passenger seat back as far as it would go and tried to sleep, but the weird orange glow of the parking lot lights bled through my eyelids. Every passing car sounded like a threat. My stomach growled, a hollow, aching protest. I had $38 left after putting $5 of gas in the tank. I was homeless. The word echoed in the cramped, stale air of the car. Homeless. 2 days passed in a miserable haze. I used the Walmart bathroom to wash my face. I bought a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter. I spent hours at the public library using their Wi-Fi to fill out more applications until the words blurred together. I got one email back, "Thank you for your interest, but we've decided to move forward with other candidates." The rejection felt personal now, another nail in my coffin. On the third day my phone buzzed. It was a group text from my mom. My dad and grandma were in the chat. Asterisk. "Don't forget, Father's Day lunch is at Grandma's house on Sunday, 1 p.m. See you there, asterisk." I stared at the message. It was so completely absurdly normal. It was like she hadn't thrown me out on the street 3 days ago. Like I wasn't currently reading her text from a library parking lot because it was the only place I could get a signal and charge my phone. A laugh escaped my lips, a harsh, dry sound. I typed back my thumbs, moving with a cold fury. Asterisk. "I'm not coming." Asterisk. My dad replied almost instantly. Asterisk. "Don't be like that, Jackson." Asterisk. Asterisk. Like what times I typed. Asterisk. Homeless. "I don't have enough gas to get to Grandma's. It's over 30 miles away." Asterisk. My grandma added her outer voice to the chorus. A voice I usually loved, now dripping with a syrupy, manipulative sweetness. Asterisk. "Jackson, honey, I made your favorite cherry pie. We're all looking forward to seeing you. Everyone will miss my presence." Asterisk. Asterisk presents times I almost threw the phone. Asterisk. "You want me to show up with presents? I'm living in my car." Asterisk. The phone rang. It was my mom. I let it go to voicemail, but she called right back. I knew she wouldn't stop. I finally answered, pressing the phone to my ear. "What is your problem?" she snapped. "No, hello, no preamble." "My problem," I said, my voice shaking with a rage I didn't know I had. "My problem is that my own mother kicked me out with an hour's notice and now expects me to show up to a family party and pretend everything is fine." "We are trying to include you," she said, her voice rising to match mine. "We care about you, and this is how you treat us, by throwing a pity party for yourself. Your father is hurt." "Hurt," I screamed into the phone, not caring who heard me in the quiet parking lot. "He's hurt." "Good, I hope he is." "You can tell the man you're celebrating the Father of the Year that his son is sleeping in a goddamn Toyota Camry because of him, because of both of you." "You are being so dramatic," she spit back. "This is exactly why we had to do what we did. You're manipulative and you refuse to take responsibility for yourself." "Responsibility? I begged you for help. I told you I was sick. You didn't care. You just wanted me gone. But you still want me to show up for the family photo, don't you? You still want to be able to tell your friends that we all had a lovely Father's Day lunch together." There was a pause on the other end. I heard her take a sharp breath. "You're breaking your grandmother's heart," she said, her voice dropping to a low, guilt-laden whisper. That was it. The final play. The last-ditch effort to reel me back in. But the line had already snapped. I saw it all with a blinding, painful clarity. They didn't care about me. They cared about the idea of me, the son who plays his part, the happy family that doesn't exist. My well-being was an inconvenience to their narrative. My suffering was just me being dramatic. "No," I said, my voice suddenly calm, steady. "You are. All of you." I ended the call. My hands were steady now. I opened the group text, my finger hovering over the screen. Dad had sent another message. Asterisk. "Just show up, Jackson. Stop making this a big deal." Asterisk. He still didn't get it. He never would. They wanted me to participate in the charade. They wanted me to pretend that the man who confirmed my eviction with a single word deserved to be celebrated. They wanted me to smile, eat cherry pie, and act like I wasn't counting the change in my cup holder to see if I could afford another gallon of gas. They thought lighting a fire under me would make me grow up. They were right. It did. The fire had burned away every last scrap of obligation I ever felt towards them. I typed out one final message. Asterisk. I owe you nothing. Asterisk. I sent it. Then, one by one, I blocked their numbers. Mom, Dad, Grandma. It was a strange, hollow feeling, like amputating a part of myself that had already gone septic. I started the car. The gas needle was hovering just above E. I had enough to get somewhere. For the first time in my life, it wouldn't be toward any of them. I pulled out of the library parking lot and turned left, away from the direction of my grandmother's house. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I wasn't going back. That was my present to them. That was my revenge.
Story 9. My therapist says I should start with the first time I felt it. The specific moment the resentment put down roots. It was the summer I turned 9. I'd saved up for months to buy a shimmering purple Schwinn with handlebar tassels. I loved that bike more than I loved anything. My brother David, who was 12, decided to see if he could ride it down the basement stairs. He couldn't. I found my beautiful bike crumpled at the bottom of the steps, the front wheel bent into a sad metal frown. I screamed. Not a cry. A raw, furious scream. My dad came running. He took one look at the bike, then at David standing at the top of the stairs with a sheepish grin, and sighed. "David, what have we told you about being careful?" he said. His voice softer than the situation warranted. "It was an accident," David mumbled, his limp more pronounced when he was in trouble. It was his go-to move. The slight drag of his right foot, a souvenir from a childhood illness, was his get-out-of-jail-free card. My dad just nodded. "Well, accidents happen." He turned to me, my face streaked with tears and rage. "It's just a bike, Elena. We can't get angry at your brother. You know he doesn't always think things through. They never bought me a new one." A month later, David got a brand new 10-speed for his birthday. To encourage him to get outside more, Mom had said, completely missing the jagged irony. That was the first lesson. There was the world, and then there were the rules for David. For 42 years, I've lived with that distinction. It's a distinction that has cost me over a decade in copays to Dr. Anya, who listens patiently while I unpack the same baggage week after week. It's the reason my husband Mark knows to just pour me a large glass of wine after any extended family function. It was always be patient with David. Don't upset David. You have to understand, Elena, things are harder for him. Harder how he had a disability, yes, but it didn't stop him from holding a steady enough job in IT, from getting married, from having a son. It didn't stop him from being careless and selfish and utterly unaccountable because Mom and Dad always swooped in to clean up his messes. The biggest mess was Leo. David's wife, Sarah, was a saint. She was the only one who ever saw David for exactly who he was, and she loved him anyway. When she died of a sudden aneurysm 10 years ago, Leo was only 8. David fell apart. Not in the grief-stricken "I must be strong for my son" way. In the "I can't handle this, someone else fix it" way. So my parents did. They stepped in and Leo came to live with them. They raised him. He's a great kid, 19 now, and starting college. I love him. But every time I see him in my parents' house, a part of me tightens. He's another monument to David's inability to be a grown-up and my parents' unending willingness to enable it. Another accident they cleaned up. Which is why when my mom called last Tuesday, my stomach filled with cold, heavy dread. "Hi, sweetie," she said, her voice overly bright. "Your father and I have decided. It's finally time to get our affairs in order. We've made an appointment with a lawyer, a Mr. Davies, for this Saturday. We want you and David to be there." I leaned against my kitchen counter staring at a drawing my daughter Chloe had taped to the fridge. "Okay," I said slowly. "Oh, will you mean?" "That's right. Just to make sure everything is clear and fair. Asterisk. Fair asterisk." The word hung in the air between us. In my family, fair was a 4-letter word. It meant whatever was easiest for David. "Saturday is fine, Mom," I said, my voice flatter than I intended. "Mark and I are taking the kids to the zoo, but I can come after." "Oh, good. It's at 2. And Elena," she added, her tone shifting, becoming cautious. "Please. Let's just keep it simple. No drama. Asterisk. Don't upset David. Asterisk. The old refrain. I'm not the one who creates drama, Mom," I said, and hung up before she could reply. Saturday arrived with a low gray sky that matched my mood. I walked into my parents' house, a place that hadn't changed since I was a kid. The same smell of lemon polish and Mom's rose-scented potpourri. The same ticking grandfather clock in the hall. They were all in the living room. My dad, looking smaller and more fragile than I remembered, sat in his worn leather recliner. My mom perched on the edge of the sofa, wringing her hands. David was sprawled in the armchair opposite Dad, scrolling on his phone, the picture of unbothered entitlement. And at the coffee table, a man in a stiff gray suit had a briefcase open. Mr. Davies. He had the bland, neutral face of someone paid to not have an opinion. "Elena, you're here," my mom said, relief washing over her face. "Sorry I'm late," I said, kissing her on the cheek. I nodded at my dad and shot a look at David, who grunted in acknowledgement without looking up from his screen. Typical. I sat on the sofa next to my mother. The tension was thick enough to taste. Mr. Davies cleared his throat. "All right," he began, pulling out a sheaf of papers. "If we're all ready. Your parents have expressed their wishes to me, and I've drafted a last will and testament for their review. The primary goal, as they've stated, is an equal and fair distribution of the estate." There. It was again. Asterisk fair. Asterisk. My dad shifted in his chair. "We just want to do right by everyone," he said, not looking at me. "We've thought about this a lot. It's important to us that the family stays strong after we're gone." I felt a muscle in my jaw tighten. My family wasn't strong. It was a carefully constructed ecosystem built around one person's needs, and everyone else was just support staff. My own kids, Chloe and Sam, weren't even a consideration in this room. It was just about the original cast. Mr. Davies put on a pair of reading glasses. "The document is quite standard," he explained. "It assigns your father as executor for your mother's estate and vice versa, should one predecease the other. In the event of their passing together, it outlines the distribution of their primary assets, namely this house, and their combined savings and investment portfolio." He paused, looking over his glasses at my brother and me. My heart started to pound, a slow, heavy drumbeat against my ribs. This was it. The moment of truth. Decades of resentment of being the responsible one, the one who built her own life without a safety net, all came down to this piece of paper. I just wanted it to be simple. 50-50. Clean. Anything else was a betrayal. My mom reached over and patted my hand, her palm clammy. We think it's the best way, honey, she whispered, her eyes pleading with me. Asterisk. Don't make a scene. Please, Elena. Asterisk. Mr. Davies took a sip of water, then looked down at the document. After all debts are settled, the remaining estate, he announced, his voice clinical and final, is to be liquidated and divided into 3 equal shares. 3 equal shares. The words echoed in the stuffy living room. My brain snagged on the number. 3. There were 2 of us. 2 children. Me and David. I forced a small, tight laugh. I'm sorry, Mr. Davies. I must have misheard. Did you say 3? Mr. Davies glanced at my parents. My mother gave a weak, almost imperceptible nod. That is correct, the lawyer said. 1 share for your brother David. 1 share for you, Elena. And 1 share for your nephew Leo. My blood went cold. I looked from my mother's pleading face to my father's determined avoidance of my gaze. Leo, I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Why is Leo a primary heir? Well, honey. My mom started, her voice trembling slightly. We raised him. He's like a son to us. He has times a son, I said, pointing a thumb at David, who was finally looking up from his phone, a scowl forming on his face. And I have 2 children, Chloe and Sam. If we're including grandchildren as primary heirs, then shouldn't all 3 of them be included? Shouldn't the estate be split into 5 parts? The logic of it felt clean, undeniable, but I knew logic had no place here. Don't be ridiculous, Elena, David snapped, sitting up straighter. This has nothing to do with your kids. This is about Leo. Mom and Dad are just trying to do the right thing by him. The right thing. The cap on 40 years of swallowed anger popped off. The right thing is to treat your children equally. And if you decide to change the rules and include grandchildren, you treat them equally too. Or are Chloe and Sam just worth less? Leave it alone, David warned, his voice low. This is their business, not yours. It becomes my business when my children are being deliberately excluded. I turn to my parents. Is this what you want to send, a message from beyond the grave that one grandchild mattered more than the others because he was a mess you had to clean up? That is not fair. Elena, my dad said, his voice cracking. He looked 100 years old. Fair? I shot back, the word tasting like poison. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that my brand new bike got destroyed? And I was told to get over it because accidents happen. But a month later, David got a new one. Is it fair that I've had to be the responsible one my entire life while he gets a free pass for everything? Because things are harder for him. Oh, for God's sake, you're still on about that stupid bike, David exploded, getting to his feet. The limp was more pronounced, his tell. This isn't about your kids. This is about you. You've always resented me. And now you're punishing my son for it. You're punishing a kid who lost his mother because you've got some deep-seated childhood bullshit you can't get over. It's pathetic. My bullshit, I stood up to, my whole body shaking. My bullshit is that I'm sick of watching you fail upwards your entire life on the backs of our parents. Leo is with them because you couldn't handle being a father. And now you're letting them write my children out of their own family history to reward you for it. Stop it. My mother shrieked, a sound I hadn't heard since I was a child. She was clutching her chest, her face pale. Both of you just stop it. My dad struggled to his feet, grabbing the arm of his recliner for support. Mr. Davies, he said, his voice raspy with effort. Change it. Just change it 50-50. Just for Elena and David. Make this stop. The room went silent. The only sound was the frantic ticking of the grandfather clock. David stared at me, his eyes filled with a pure white-hot hatred I had never seen before. I had one. But it felt exactly like I had just burned my own house down. Mr. Davies, looking deeply uncomfortable, just nodded. As you wish. I didn't wait for him to pack up his briefcase. I grabbed my purse and walked out, the slam of the front door echoing behind me. I was barely in my car, hands trembling on the steering wheel, when my phone buzzed. It was David. I ignored it. It buzzed again. A text message. Asterisk, you're an idiot, Elena. I hope you're happy. You just blew this whole family up for a few bucks. Asterisk. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat and drove. I didn't tell Mark what happened when I got home. I couldn't form the words. I just hugged Chloe and Sam so tightly they complained. Then I went into my bedroom and cried. The next few days were a wall of suffocating silence. I called my mom's cell. It went to voicemail. I sent a text. No reply. They were icing me out. David had blocked my number. The ecosystem was in shock. The support staff had staged a coup, and the king was furious. I was completely, utterly alone. On Wednesday evening, my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Aunt Elena, it's Leo. My stomach dropped. Leo, hi honey. How are you? I'm fine, he said. His voice was calm, which was somehow worse than if he'd been angry. Grandma told me what happened. A long pause. Look, for what it's worth, I don't care about the money. I'm going to be fine. I wanted to say something. Okay, I whispered. My dad is a mess, you know, he's really hurt. And Grandma and Grandpa are just sad. He took a breath. I get that you have issues with my dad. I've seen it my whole life. But bringing me into it, making it about me versus your kids, it was a total Karen move, Aunt Elena. A Karen move. The phrase hit me like a physical slap. He didn't scream. He didn't curse me out. He just passed judgment, cool and quiet, and in that moment he validated every dark fear I had. I hadn't fought for fairness. I had thrown a tantrum in a lawyer's office. I had used my own children as weapons in a 40-year war with my brother. I had punished a good kid for a lifetime of slights that weren't his fault. David was right. I had punished his son for my own resentment. I started, but no words came. What could I say? Times? You don't understand. It's more complicated than that times. It felt as weak and flimsy as David's old excuses. I just thought you should know, he said, his voice devoid of emotion. Bye? He hung up. I sat there in the dark of my quiet kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear. I had finally screamed loud enough for them to hear me. This was my revenge. I had torn down the system that had made me feel small and invisible my whole life. And all I felt was the cold, hollow emptiness of the space where my family used to be. Story Teen. My mom always talked about her retirement fund like it was a holy grail, a shimmering, untouchable nest egg she'd spent her life building. It was her answer to everything. The first time it really stung was my freshman year of college. I'd scraped together scholarships, grants, and the money from my 2 part-time jobs, but I came up $800 short for my first tuition payment. It was due in a week. I swallowed my pride and called her. "Mom, I'm so close," I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "I just need a little help." $800. "I can pay you back as soon as I get my next few paychecks." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could picture her in her spotless kitchen wiping down a counter that was already clean. "Rachel, honey," she began, her voice taking on that gentle, condescending tone she used for delivering bad news. "You know I would if I could. But every single spare penny goes into the retirement fund. I can't touch it. The penalties are just astronomical. You have to understand I need to secure my future." I understood. I always understood. I said, "Okay, Mom. No problem. I'll figure it out." And I did. I sold my grandfather's old guitar, the one he'd taught me to play on. I picked up extra shifts bussing tables until my feet were swollen and my back ached. I made the payment with 3 hours to spare. I didn't tell her how. 2 years later, my laptop died during finals week. Not a slow, dignified death, but a sudden smoke-smelling sizzle that left the screen black. I was in the middle of a 10-page paper on microeconomic theory. I called her from a library computer, my voice shaking with stress. "It's a $500 laptop, Mom. That's all I need. I found one on sale. I'll pay you back $50 a week. I swear." "Oh, Rachel," she sighed, a sound heavy with disappointment. "A laptop is a big responsibility. Maybe if you'd taken better care of the one you had. I can't just pull $500 out of thin air. It would have to come from the fund. And I just can't touch the fund. You know that." She suggested I apply for a credit card. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. She was advising me, her 20-year-old daughter, to go into high-interest debt because her sacred retirement fund couldn't spare a loan for an essential school tool. "Right. The fund," I said, my voice flat. "Got it." I finished my finals by borrowing a friend's computer between 2 and 5 a.m. for 3 nights straight. I passed, but barely. My GPA took a hit. I ate ramen noodles for a month and bought a refurbished laptop myself. The final time I ever asked her for anything was the big one. I'd graduated with honors, a miracle in itself, and landed my dream job, a junior graphic designer position at a firm in Chicago. It was my ticket out, my chance to finally start my life. The only catch was I had to move in 2 weeks and needed $200 for the security deposit and first month's rent on an apartment. I had savings, but not that much and not that fast. I practiced my pitch for an hour before calling her. I wasn't a kid asking for a handout anymore. I was an adult presenting a business proposal. "Mom, this is an investment in my future," I explained, calmly, laying out the salary, the benefits, the career trajectory. "It's a loan. I've written up a payment plan. You'll have it all back with 5% interest in 4 months. I just need a bridge to get me there." This time her refusal felt different. It wasn't gentle. It was cold. "Rachel, I'm going to say this one last time. My money is for my time's retirement. Not for your tuition. Not for your computers, and not for your apartments. I've worked for 30 years to build that security. To have a life with Mark. I'm Mark. Her boyfriend of the last 5 years. A smooth-talking car salesman with a questionable mustache and a knack for telling stories where he was always the hero. I never liked him. He had shifty eyes. Mark and I have a plan, she continued, her voice defensive. We're being disciplined. Something you could stand to learn. You need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. That was the line that broke something in me. I'd been on my own 2 feet since I was 17. I was holding down jobs while my friends were at parties. I was figuring out financial aid forms and tax returns by myself. All she'd ever provided was the no. You're right, Mom, I said, and the line went quiet. I do. Thank you for the lesson. I hung up before she could reply. I called my best friend sobbing, and she co-signed a small, terrible loan from a predatory lender without a second thought. I moved to Chicago. I started my job. I worked my ass off. I paid off that loan, and then I kept working. For the next 2 years, I didn't ask my mom for a thing. Our calls became shorter, more superficial. She'd talk about her garden, about the trip she and Mark were planning for when she finally retired, and about how proud she was that I was so independent. I never mentioned the guitar, the late nights in the library, or the high-interest loan that had gotten me here. What was the point? Then last Tuesday, I got a call from my Aunt Carol, my mom's sister. Her voice was a frantic whisper. Rachel, are you sitting down? Have you talked to your mother? No, not this week. Why, what's wrong? I pictured a fall, a car accident, a bad diagnosis. It's Mark, she said. And I felt my stomach clench. He was arrested, Rach. It's bad. Like national news bad. Some kind of massive fraud scheme with the dealership. They're saying he bilked investors out of millions. I sank into my office chair, stunned. Oh my God. Is Mom okay? She's a wreck, Carol said, her voice cracking. But that's not why I'm calling. Rachel, they set his bail. It was astronomical. The judge called him a flight risk. How astronomical? Aunt Carol took a shaky breath. $500,000. He needed $150,000 in cash. My blood ran cold. He's still in jail then. There's no way. No, Rachel, she cut me off. Her voice barely audible. He's out. He's at your mother's house right now. She paid it. The words didn't compute. What do you mean? She paid it. With what? The retirement fund, Carol whispered, as if the words themselves were cursed. She drained it. All of it. She took out every last penny. The phone felt slippery in my hand. $150,000. For him, the tuition, the laptop, the apartment. All the times I had begged, all the times I had scraped by, all the lectures about discipline and her sacred future. It all came crashing down in a wave of white-hot rage. She's also paying for his lawyer, my aunt added, her voice full of pity. She said, you do whatever it takes for the people you love. I didn't say anything. I just disconnected the call. I stared at the wall of my office, the one in the city I'd moved to all by myself. For a long, silent minute, I felt nothing but a deafening roar in my ears. Then I stood up, grabbed my purse, and walked out of the office. I didn't say a word to anyone. I got in my car and started the 4-hour drive to her house. The people you love. We were about to have a talk about the people you love. The 4 hours passed in a red-tinged haze. I didn't listen to music. I didn't stop for coffee. I just drove, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. My jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. Her words echoed in my head on a loop. Asterisk, the penalties are astronomical. I can't touch the fund. You need to stand on your own 2 feet. Asterisk. I pulled into her driveway without even slowing down, my tires crunching on the gravel. His silver convertible, the one he was always bragging about, was parked next to my mom's sensible sedan. Of course it was. The front door opened before I even reached it. My mother stood there, her face puffy and stained with tears, but her expression hardened when she saw me. Rachel, what are you doing here? I'm a little busy right now. Behind her, I saw him. Mark. Lounging on her Times couch in her Times spotless living room, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He had the gall to give me a little nod like we were meeting at a barbecue. I heard you were busy, I said, pushing past her into the house. The air was thick with her perfume and his cheap cologne. I heard you made a very significant withdrawal. My mom flinched, shutting the door behind me. Your Aunt Carol has no right? No right, I spun around, my voice louder than I intended. She has no right to tell me that my mother, the woman who wouldn't loan me $800 to stay in college, just liquidated her entire life savings for a con artist. Mark shifted on the couch. Now listen here, Rachel. Don't you dare speak to me, I snapped, my eyes locked on him. Don't you say one single word. He visibly recoiled, sinking back into the cushions. I turned back to my mom. Her face was a mask of indignation. Mark is in trouble. He needed me. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. I let out a laugh, a harsh, ugly sound. You're right. It's not. My tuition was an investment in my future. My laptop was a tool for my education. My security deposit was for a roof over my head, so I could start the career you claim to be so proud of. This, I gestured at Mark, who was now staring intently at his drink, is an investment in a federal prison inmate. That's a horrible thing to say, she cried, her hands fluttering to her chest. He's innocent. It's all a misunderstanding. A multi-million-dollar misunderstanding, Mom. They don't set bail at $500,000 for a parking ticket. What was the penalty for this withdrawal? Was it astronomical? Or are the penalties suddenly manageable when it's for him? You are being so selfish and so entitled, she shot back, her voice dripping with the same condescending disappointment I'd heard my whole life. This isn't about you. This is about me and the man I love and the sacrifices we make for family. That was it. The final blow. The phrase my aunt had repeated over the phone. You do whatever it takes for the people you love. I quoted, my voice suddenly quiet, dangerously calm. You said that, didn't you? So I have to ask. Who do you love, Mom? She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. Because for 24 years I thought it was me. But I see now that love to you has a price tag. And mine was always too low. $800 too low. $500 too low. $2,200. Definitely too low. But $150,000 for him. That's a price you're willing to pay. I looked from her tear-streaked face to the man sitting on her couch, a parasite in a polo shirt. I felt a profound, chilling clarity. The anger was still there, a hot coal in my gut, but it was being replaced by something else. A cold, hard finality. You taught me to stand on my own 2 feet, I said, taking a step back towards the door. Lesson learned. Congratulations. You're finally free of the burden of being a mother. I walked out, leaving the door open. I didn't look back. I got in my car and drove away, and this time I didn't see red. I saw nothing at all. The drive back to Chicago was silent. The rage had burned itself out, leaving behind a hollow, aching void. I kept replaying the scene, her words echoing in the emptiness. Asterisk entitled, selfish, ungrateful. Asterisk. Had I been cruel? For a few terrifying miles, I questioned myself. Maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't understand love or sacrifice. Then my phone buzzed. It was Aunt Carol. He's already asking her for more money, she said, no preamble. For the lawyer. A high-powered, expensive one. She's talking about taking out a second mortgage on the house. The doubt vanished, replaced by a wave of pity so intense it felt like nausea. She doesn't have it, Carol. I know, she sighed. I told her that. I told her he's a black hole, and he will suck her into it until nothing is left. She told me I was being unsupportive and jealous of her happiness. What happiness? I asked, my voice flat. Exactly, Carol said. Listen, honey. What you did today, it was hard. But it was right. You held up a mirror, and she just refused to look in it. None of this is your fault. Her words were a balm on a raw wound. When I got off the phone, I pulled into a rest stop. I opened my contacts, found my mom's name, and I blocked her number. I blocked her on every social media platform. I severed the connection. It didn't feel good, but it felt necessary. Like setting a broken bone. Painful but required for healing. 6 months have passed. Aunt Carol keeps me updated in short, sad bursts. Mark's legal bills wiped out what was left of Mom's checking and savings. The second mortgage went through. He's promising to pay her back tenfold once he's exonerated. He never will be. The evidence against him is overwhelming. Last week, Mom had to sell her car. She's taking the bus now. I sit in my apartment, the one I paid for myself, looking out at the Chicago skyline. My career is taking off. I got a raise. I have friends. I have a life I built with my own 2 hands on a foundation of ramen noodles and sleepless nights. I'm happy. Genuinely. And I find myself thinking about the future. Not with dread, but with a kind of steely certainty. One day, probably a year or 2 from now, my phone will ring from an unknown number. It will be her. Mark will be in prison, the house will be gone, and the money will be a distant memory. She will be crying. She will tell me she made a terrible mistake. She will tell me she has nothing and nowhere to go. And she will ask me for help. I already know what I'm going to say. I'll let her finish. I'll take a quiet breath, and I will give her the same gift she gave me so many times, the one lesson she truly taught me. I'm sorry, Mom. But you need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet.
Story 11.
The woman I married wasn't just understanding. She was my biggest advocate. Ava loved that I was a pilot. She traced the flight paths on a globe, packed little notes in my flight bag, and texted me pictures of the dog with captions like, "Your co-pilot is waiting." She got it. The long hauls, the weird hours, the jet lag that felt like a physical weight. For 4 years, she was my perfect ground crew. Then 6 months ago, the signal was lost. It started small, like turbulence you barely notice. It was her birthday. I was supposed to have the whole week off. but a senior captain had a family emergency. They needed someone for a 4-8-hour London run. I tried to say no, I really did, but the pressure was immense. I promise I will make it up to you, I told Ava, holding her hands. We'll do your birthday the second I'm back. Bigger and better. She'd pulled her hands away. Her smile was tight, brittle. It's fine, Wyatt. Work is work. But it wasn't fine. When I got back laden with gifts from Harrods and a reservation at the best restaurant in town, the woman who greeted me was a stranger. A cold, distant stranger who lived in my house and slept in my bed. That weekend was the beginning of the end, I just didn't know it yet. A few weeks later, I was getting ready for a short domestic flight. I just had a fresh haircut and a shave. Ava watched me from the doorway of our bathroom, her arms crossed. Getting all cleaned up, she said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, part of the job. Gotta look sharp. I smiled at her reflection in the mirror. Who for? I stopped, razor in hand. What? For the passengers. For the airline. What kind of question is that? You never used to care this much. You just shave and go. Now it's product. You're using product in your hair. I stared at her dumbfounded. It's pomade, Ava. I've used it for 10 years. She just shook her head and walked away, leaving the accusation hanging in the air like cheap cologne. From then on, it was a constant barrage. Every flight became a source of suspicion. My first officer, Chloe, became her primary target. Chloe's a brilliant pilot, sharp as a tack in all business. She's also a happily married mother of 2. To me, she was just my colleague. To Ava, she was the enemy. How was your flight with Times, Chloe? Times, she'd ask, emphasizing the name like it was a disease. It was fine. A little choppy over the Rockies, but we landed on time. Did she wear that perfume again? The one you said you liked? I have no idea what perfume she wears, Ava. I'm usually a little busy, flying the plane. The fights always ended the same way. She'd accuse me of being defensive, I'd accuse her of being irrational, and one of us would end up sleeping in the guest room. I was constantly exhausted, not from the flights, but from the emotional gauntlet I had to run every time I came home. I was walking on eggshells around the one person I was supposed to be able to relax with. I missed my wife. I missed the woman who would laugh at my stupid jokes and fall asleep on my chest while we watched movies. This new version of Ava was a ghost haunting our home with paranoia and resentment. I couldn't lose her. I wouldn't. Our 5th anniversary was coming up. This was it. This was my chance to pull us out of this nosedive. I needed a grand gesture, something so undeniable it would shatter this wall of suspicion she'd built between us. The plan was risky, but I was desperate. I booked a surprise 10-day trip to Bali. A private villa, infinity pool, the works. The same place she'd bookmarked on her laptop a year ago, sighing about how we'd go someday. I got the time off approved, bought the tickets, and arranged everything. The hard part, I had to pretend I forgot our anniversary. The week leading up to it was brutal. Every day she dropped hints. Can you believe it's been almost 5 years, she'd say, watching my face for any flicker of recognition? I played dumb, grunting about a flight simulator exam or a new route schedule. Each lie felt like swallowing glass, especially when I saw the flicker of hurt in her eyes. But I told myself the payoff would be worth it. It had to be. On the morning of our anniversary, the silence in the house was deafening. I made coffee, and she stared into her mug like it held the secrets to the universe. I knew I had to go for the kill. I put on my uniform. Where are you going? She asked, her voice flat. Got called in. Last minute red-eye to London. I'm sorry, Aves. I'll be back tomorrow night. I braced for impact. She just laughed. A hollow, bitter sound that didn't reach her eyes. Of course you do. London. Is Chloe your co-pilot on this trip too? I don't know, I lied. Just go back to sleep. I'll call you when I land. I leaned in to kiss her goodbye. She turned her head, and my lips met her cold cheek. My heart sank. But I had to see this through. I love you, I whispered. She didn't answer. I walked out the door, my flight bag feeling heavier than ever. But I didn't go to the airport. I drove to a nearby 2-4-hour diner, the tickets to Bali burning a hole in my pocket. I ordered a black coffee and watched the clock on the wall nursing that single cup for hours. Each tick was a lifetime. I imagined her at home, hurt and angry. I felt like the biggest bastard on the planet. But I kept picturing her face when I walked back in at midnight. The anger melting into shock, then joy. It would work. It had to. At 1:14:05 p.m., I left the diner. I made one last stop to pick up a bottle of our favorite champagne and a bouquet of the stargazer lilies she loved. My hands were shaking as I pulled into our driveway. The house was dark except for a single lamp in the living room casting a soft, warm glow. Good. She was probably waiting up reading a book. I crept up the walkway, my heart hammering against my ribs. I slid my key into the lock as quietly as I could, turning it with surgical precision. The door swung open into the silent house. Surprise. I started to say the word, dying in my throat. I dropped the flowers. The champagne bottle slipped from my grasp and hit the hardwood floor with a dull thud, miraculously not breaking. There in the soft glow of the lamp was Ava. She was on our living room couch, and she was completely naked. Her back was to me, her head thrown back as if in pleasure. Then I heard a sound. A toilet flushing in the downstairs washroom. The door handle turned. The man who stepped out of the washroom wasn't surprised or angry or even embarrassed. He just looked inconvenienced. He was tall, obscenely handsome in a generic catalog model way, and as naked as she was. He glanced from me to the flowers on the floor to Ava scrambling for the throw blanket on the armchair. Payments on the kitchen island, he said, his voice flat and professional. He walked over to a neat pile of clothes on a dining chair and started dressing like he was in a gym locker room. My brain finally caught up. Payment. Hired. This wasn't a lover. This was a transaction. I felt a bizarre wave of relief so quickly followed by a tidal wave of disgust it almost put me on my knees. Ava had the blanket clutched to her chest. Tears were streaming down her face, but her eyes were defiant. You forgot, she hissed, her voice trembling with a rage that felt rehearsed. You left me. On our anniversary. What was I supposed to do, Wyatt? Just sit here alone? I couldn't form a sentence. I held up the Bali tickets in my shaking hand. I didn't even know I was still holding them. They felt like sheets of lead. I dropped them onto the entryway table, next to her purse. The corner of the envelope pointed right at her. The man, now fully dressed, picked up an envelope from the kitchen counter without counting it. He slipped on his shoes and walked to the door, giving me a wide berth, as if I were a down power line. He didn't look at either of us again. The front door clicked shut behind him, leaving a silence that was louder than any screaming match we'd ever had. Ava's practiced anger crumbled. It was a mistake, she sobbed. Just a stupid one-time thing to hurt you because you hurt me. I was going to tell him to leave before. I swear, Wyatt. Nothing happened. I looked from her tear-streaked face to the disheveled couch cushions. I didn't believe her. More importantly, I didn't care. The next 2 weeks were a Cold War fought in a 10-by-10 therapy office, with beige walls and abstract art that looked like a Rorschach test for misery. Ava begged for us to go. I agreed not because I wanted to save us, but because I needed a witness to the demolition. Dr. Albright was a calm woman in her 50s with kind eyes that didn't miss a thing. For 2 sessions, Ava performed her monologue. The lonely wife, the forgotten anniversary, the one-time desperate cry for attention. She cried on cue. She looked at me with pleading eyes. I just sat there, a block of ice, saying nothing. On the 3rd session, Dr. Albright leaned forward. "Ava," she said gently, "your pain over the anniversary is valid. But Wyatt, you've mentioned this. Disconnect began months ago. Right after your birthday." I nodded once my eyes fixed on Ava. "Ava, can you tell me about that?" the doctor asked. The mask cracked. A flicker of sheer venom crossed her face before being replaced by the familiar tears. "He left me. On my birthday. For work. For times her asterisk." Her Dr. Albright asked. Chloe. Ava spat the name. His co-pilot. He gets all dressed up for her. He comes home smelling like her perfume. He abandoned me for his little work wife. I finally spoke. My voice was rusty hollow. Chloe is married. She has 2 kids. I don't even know what perfume she wears. "You're lying," Ava screamed, half rising from the couch. "You've been lying this whole time. I know you have. You pilots are all the same." Dr. Albright held up a hand. "Ava, let's stay on the topic. Your assumption that Wyatt was being unfaithful seems to be the root of this. Is it an assumption, or do you have proof?" Ava laughed, the same hollow, bitter sound from our anniversary morning. It scraped my nerve endings raw. "Proof," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I don't need proof." She finally looked me dead in the eye, and the stranger was back. But this time, she wasn't cold and distant. She was burning. "Fine. You want the truth. You want to know what happened on my birthday." I went out. I got drunk. And I went home with the first man who told me I was beautiful. The air left the room. Dr. Albright's pen froze over her notepad. I just stared. 6 months. It wasn't a one-time act of revenge. It was a pattern. A lifestyle. And it wasn't just him, she continued, the words spilling out like poison. There have been others. Why not? You think I'm stupid? You think I believe you're spending all those nights in hotels around the world just sleeping? I was just leveling the playing field. I felt nothing. Not rage, not sadness. It was like watching a plane crash from 1,000 miles away. A distant, silent tragedy that had already happened. The woman I married had died 6 months ago, and I was only just now attending the funeral. I stood up. "I'm done," I said, my voice eerily calm. "We're done." I walked out of the office, leaving the 3 of them, Ava, her confession, and the stunned therapist in that sterile beige room. When her parents arrived the next afternoon, they found Ava sitting on the floor surrounded by suitcases, weeping. Her mother rushed to her side, while her father, a stern man named Robert I'd always respected, fixed me with a glare. "I cannot believe you're doing this, Wyatt," her mother, Carol said, stroking Ava's hair. Marriage is hard. The life of a pilot's wife is lonely. You can't just throw it away. This is on you, Robert added, his voice low and accusatory. A man is supposed to provide, yes, but he's also supposed to be present. If you can't handle the job and the marriage, you get a new job. I stood there and took it. I let them say their piece, let them paint me as the villain, the absent husband who broke their little girl's heart. When they were finally out of breath, I looked at Robert. She cheated on me, I said. Carol scoffed. Oh, please. Ava told us about your anniversary. She made a foolish mistake because she was heartbroken. No, I cut her off, my voice like steel. Not one mistake. It started 6 months ago on her birthday. She confessed it all in front of our marriage counselor yesterday. There have been multiple men, Carol. She justified it because she times assumed times I was cheating on her during my layovers. The righteous anger drained from their faces, replaced by slack-jawed horror. They both turned to look at their daughter, who was now sobbing into her hands for a completely different reason. She wasn't heartbroken. She was caught. Robert's face hardened into a mask of pure disgust. He looked at his daughter on the floor as if she were a stranger. Get up, Ava, he said. The command was quiet, but it cracked like a whip in the silent room. Get your things in the car. Carol just stood there speechless, her hand hovering over her daughter's shoulder before pulling it back. She wouldn't even touch her. I watched them herd her out the door like a disgraced child. I didn't help with the bags. I didn't say goodbye. The door closed and the house was finally truly quiet. I walked into the kitchen and saw the Bali tickets still sitting on the entryway table. I picked them up, walked them to the shredder, and fed them into the machine. I watched the dream of a private villa and an infinity pool turn into thin strips of meaningless paper. The only revenge I needed was a life she couldn't be a part of. The next morning, I called my lawyer,